This is super busted.
Yeah, no. Don't go what's being so bad.
We're on the be right back screen again.
That's good. That's where we should
Oh,
be.
maybe.
I've transitioned us into main camera stream. Let's see if you can see our beautiful faces.
We
Like,
can, I think.
aha!
I'm live. Just gonna angle my camera a bit to
Hello,
try and
everyone.
be able to sit comfortably because I was sat in a super weird position. It was horrible.
So we're vaguely
Um,
live at least. You did miss say we handed them out. I did. Everyone got VIP on the first day. And if you were a better fan, no, I wouldn't say if better fan. That's awful. I would never say that. Everybody is a VIP here, which I feel I don't want anyone to think that cheapens the VIP experience, because I do genuinely think of you all as VIPs, because I'm sitting here painting and have had painted loads of rots because of you. So we were talking about this kind of, because I think, and I'm glad Mediocre Modeler is here for this chat, because we argue this point a lot. I think the problem, if we can kind of talk a bit more about comp play in general, I
yeah,
think people mistake competitive play with being a dick.
yeah. No,
Some
there's
people are both, for sure.
yeah, but they're few and far between. Like proper competitive players are not dicks. I think the people who misunderstand what competitive play are where you
Yeah,
have problems.
I think it's kind of a middle chaff of people who probably think they're better than they are,
Yeah, it's generally your
who get
like
salty.
local gaming store warrior
Yeah.
who wins every game in his local store through various means,
Hmm.
and then goes to a big tournament and just gets slapped around by the actual good players,
Yeah.
and then gets real salty and upset about it. And
Yeah.
takes it out on their local store by bringing more and more broken net listing nonsense and bending the rules to the nth degree.
Hmm.
And that is what gives competitive play a bad name.
Agreed. Yeah,
Exactly,
exactly.
small fish in a big pond syndrome.
Now,
Exactly.
at the same time, there is like, I enjoy comp play. Like I enjoy comp play and trying to play to win. I also play a bucket load of grots. I enjoy like literally the grot challenges. I never win the grot challenge. I just lose to varying degrees. And I think
Well,
there's definitely
but
room
but
for both.
but yeah, this is the whole thing. Comp play is a way to play 40k.
Yeah.
It's my preferred way to play 40k,
Mm,
but that doesn't make it the right way to play 40k. Do whatever you enjoy doing, I think, is the point here.
absolutely.
I play 40k almost exclusively, um, but I mean,
I'm. I used to play to win a lot. So when I was like 16, 17, I won several local 40k tournaments. Hey, we're up to 16 people in chat. I think that's a new chat record. Give
nice.
yourselves all a round of applause. Thank you, everyone in chat. So I have won 40k tournaments in my time, but they were predominantly a bunch of years ago because. And James and I were talking about this the other day. I think I've got into this habit of playing very memey lists that are really fun to write, and then you play them and you realise that they're trash and you lose in one turn, and that's kind of it. Um,
Yeah.
Ironically, though, the last four lists I've taken have been a bit memey. The last one was Grots with a super heavy and a Morkanaut, which was really fun. I enjoyed that. It wasn't
Yeah.
good because it just immediately died because the kill tank dies very easily. The one before that was 100 Necron Warriors, Xerath, and Ghost Arcs with a Nightbringer, which ironically, quite a comp list now.
Yeah. Yeah. The warrior spam's a thing. I'm
Well,
assuming Poor Hammer's referencing something there.
so yes, I'll come back to that in a second. But yeah, the list before that was a pure Deathwing list, which again wouldn't do too badly these days. And the list before that was a pure Ravenwing list. The thing that Poor Hammer is referencing. So at our local club, Poor Hammer wrote a bunch of missions, and I took a very silly list of 800 points, which was two tank commanders, a Astropath, and a Baneblade. And Poor Hammer wrote a mission where the mission was you had to get onto an objective and be there at the end of two consecutive player turns to win the game.
Right.
And Poor Hammer bought a list of deep striking cultists, and so the game was played on basically like an arrow-shaped board. So you started on the same board edge with a big divide in the middle, and then
Right.
the objective. So if players deployed based on an equilateral triangle, and the top corner was where the objective was. And Poor Hammer brought to that party a bunch of seekers, a seeker lord who could move, advance, and be warp time to immediately stand on the objective, and then a bunch of cultists who would deep strike in front of you. So the way that Paul Hammer beat me was by immediately charging their character onto the objective turn one, and then just putting so much stuff in the way that you had to kill his entire army to kill his character who was claiming the objective.
Yeah,
So that's where I've been cheated.
there's an issue with custom missions there, and with tailoring lists for custom missions are generally inherently unbalanced and easy to abuse, which is exactly what happened here.
I mean, I got played, and if I'd gone first, I would have killed everything. But
like, this is why custom missions are problematic when you try to actually play to win, because they tend to not be particularly fun for the people who didn't.
And this is it, right?
It's just to break them.
Yeah, we have a very casual Club Night scene. I don't actually begrudge. I only begrudge him that win in the way that it's funny to see people get mad about stuff.
We did have an event up in Hull where one guy brought. There was a meme list from the London Grand Tournament a couple of years ago, which was super good at playing the missions there, which was like 90 Nurglings. And you just couldn't kill it fast enough, and it started on all the objectives. And the whole point of that event was to hold objectives, right? Mm-hmm. And he brought that to a Hull event where someone had written custom missions for it. Mm-hmm. And one of those missions involved all the objectives being on the top floor of buildings, and you basically you had to take the high ground to win.
Makes sense.
And he got to the top table against me, and the TO came over with our tournament card, and it was this high ground mission. Mm-hmm. So he literally had 2 Nurgle characters who could go up floors.
Oh, yeah, because Nurglings, beasts or swarms? Either way, they can't go.
Swarms, but in 8th they couldn't go up floors. They can now. So he literally
the Obi-Wan Kenobi pack.
So yeah, he literally had 90 Nurglings who just stood on the ground floor, and I was playing Genestealer Cult, and I just deployed my whole army on the top floor of buildings, and then deep struck on the top floor of other buildings.
I mean, fair.
And there was nothing you could do about it. He got pretty salty about it. And it was like, yeah, you've kind of ruined everyone else's day by bringing an army no one could interact with for 4 games.
Yeah, fair.
And now you can't interact and you're crying foul. I mean, it's kind of how it goes, dude. I mean, it was silly. Yeah. I probably couldn't have beaten him if we got any of the other 4 missions, but...
Evening, Rob.
It is. Hey, Rob. So yeah, it is what it is, right? But that's custom missions generally... are imbalanced.
If you're not playing them for fun, then you're probably doing it wrong, frankly.
Yeah.
There's an interesting one in chat, though. So it's something we talked about. We talked about the other day when I was talking to Rob and Ian about Necrons, and something Tom raised there. How much do you think point value of games changes an army?
Oh, hugely.
Because, like things like, Necron Warrior Spam we talked about even before the new codex.
Yeah.
So we tend to play like small 800-point games at club nights, just because obviously table space is limited for us,
etc.
Yeah. So what if you go like 1,000 points, 1,500, 2K? How do you think the spread of good armies changes in your professional opinion?
Oh well, I've not put enough thought into it really, because you're putting me on the spot over there. But it's the armies that have less good options, as in all armies have good options, right? Mm-hmm. But some armies have 10 good options, some armies have 3.
Yes.
The armies that have less of the good options tend to do better at lower points, because you reach a point in 2,000 points where you cap out, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't necessarily true for now. Now Harlequin troops are better, but there was a point in 8th edition where you wanted to take 18 Harlequin bikes and a Shadowseer, and that was all the Harlequins you really wanted to take.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So once you'd taken your 18 Harlequin bikes and your Shadowseer, which was about 1,000 points, everything after that
just made your list worse.
If you were playing pure Harlequins, just made it worse, right?
That's what I've never thought about it before.
So that's the idea. Is certain armies will have units that are very, very good, but obviously you can only take so many of them. And there's also diminishing returns to spamming the same unit over and over.
I refuse to acknowledge that.
Grots at 3 points certainly were the exception. Were an exception to that rule. Spamming cheap infantry has always been good, and is still good.
5-point Grots less so.
5-point Grots are a problem, and they raised the points on all the cheap infantry because it was just so good in 8th.
So let's talk. Clutch States. We talked about Clutch States. We talked about Nane's list a bit and how the reason it was good is because it was a list that he had crafted
particularly designed.
Yeah.
So
for his style of play.
The other list that I wanted to talk about was Matt Morosoli's Chaos list. And that I've got another link. One sec.
Clearly.
This is a picture instead.
Is this one on the list that has 3 demon princes in? Keepers.
It has 2 keepers.
2 keepers.
So yeah, so Morosoli's list is demons and chaos space marines list, and this is basically this is points efficiency. So this list isn't designed specifically for a mission or anything. I mean, it does well in the missions, but it's designed to have the best, most efficient units in it.
Yeah.
So you've got the Unkillable Lord of Change, 3 Nurglings, 2 units of 5 Beasts of Nurgle, 2 Keeper of Secrets, 10 Demonettes, a Sorcerer, 10 Chaos Cultists, and 2 units of 10 Terminators, right?
Filthy.
So what you've got there are probably the 2 best monsters in the game right now in Keeper of Secrets. Chaos Terminator's got a big points drop back in whenever they did the points changes. I think it was January. So Chaos Terminators point for point are brilliant now. Beasts of Nurgle are point for point some of the toughest models in the game. So what it does is have 2 deep striking bombs that shoot really well and do combat really well.
In Terminators.
Yep. It has 2 monsters that smash all the big things to pieces. And then it's got a Lord of Change will never die and 2 units of Beasts of Nurgle that just stick around and score, right? And then a bunch of random troops that he needs. And the premise of it is, we're going to do damage to you really, really efficiently, and we're going to stand here and not die really, really efficiently. And it's kind of the antithesis of Naiden's list, in that Naiden's list is designed very, very specifically to do specific things very, very well. Whereas Matt Morosoli's list is designed to very, very efficiently play 40k, and he'll figure out the rest when he gets there.
Fair.
And this is where I was talking about, like, don't go net list Naiden's list and try and use it, because you'll just have a nightmare. Morosoli's list, if you pick that list up and you want to go to a top event and you're willing to spend a few weeks practicing properly, you know, playing games against meta lists, trying hard, objectively analyzing how you're losing, picking up, learning from your mistakes, etc., you can go and win an event with that list.
Sweet, done.
Yeah, like you can. I mean, to the point of, I've not played enough 9th edition to be making meta picks and to be making weirdo lists like Naden is at the moment. It's where I want to get back to, but I'm looking to play Chaos. You know that I've been experimenting with Keepers and Lords of Change and stuff anyway.
And Juan Diaz Demonettes. So anyone who says comp players have no taste, wait till you see James's army.
Pretty models. But yeah, so Morosoli's list is not dissimilar to what I've been running. And his list and my list, my list is basically now a tweaked version of his list, because I think there's cleverer ways to play the mission than he's doing. But that's sort of how I would look at, if you're going to net list, which is generally seen as a pretty negative thing. It doesn't have to be, you just sort of have to not. The bit about net listing that always annoyed me was when people went around and claimed it as their own.
Which I'm pretty sure has happened to you before.
Oh, God, yeah.
As in, because obviously you had a lot of success with GSC, especially Index GSC. I'm pretty sure you've told me stories before of people coming up with your list and be like, yeah, cool, I wrote this list.
Yeah, I've literally played a guy at an event who was telling anyone who would listen how he come up with it and why it was so clever and what it did so well. And it was literally a list that I won an event with a month earlier. And we then paired into each other, and he proceeded to tell me all the clever things that his list did, and then noticed my name on the team sheet and went, oh, shit. And I then picked it apart because I knew exactly how that list worked and exactly how to beat it.
Fair.
And there was a reason I was no longer playing it, right? And this is it. Like, you can play Morosoli's list, and anyone can, but give it a month. It's probably not a great idea to do. Like, lists age out at different speeds. You know, Imperial Knights stuck around for a year, basically. But nowadays, you don't want to play Imperial Knights. And that's to do with books coming out and things changing. I think the Drakari are a problem for Morosoli's Chaos list. Because a lot of how it functions is on the fact that Beasts of Nurgle, Lord Change, and Keeper of Secrets are all really high toughness. If you've got a lot of 3+ poisoned weapons, you kind of don't care.
Yeah, fair.
It's a problem. When Drakari came out back in the olden days, like last Drakari Codex came out and poisoned, like the start of that was a lot of Ravagers, a lot of Venoms was the original Drakari list that came out. Got replaced by Grotesques eventually, but Grotesques and Talos.
Who has Grotesques?
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, so when that first came out and it was a lot of Venoms and a lot of Ravagers, that's what put a stop to the Tyranid Codex, really. Because at the time, the Tyranid Codex were really good. And then Drakari came out and you kind of went, yeah, I just can't play into this anymore.
Ah, the dark
Uh,
days.
yeah. And that's how meta works, right? When a big change comes in, a new book comes out, or a new supplement, or just some new hotness gets found.
Yeah.
Because Naden might have discovered that Hellions the best unit in the game now. He probably hasn't. But
Well, he definitely hasn't, because I discovered that 6 months ago
yes,
when I bought
exactly.
60. So you're
But
welcome, Sean Nathan.
if everybody is suddenly bringing Hellions to every single event, and Hellions are a really, really hard counter to, I don't know, let's say Beasts of Nurgle. I don't think they are, but let's say they are for the point of for this purpose. Suddenly, that list with 2 units of Beasts of Nurgle as its main scoring unit is in trouble. It's no longer a meta list because the meta is pushing it out. And part of being good at competitive play and succeeding long term is being able to read that meta and pick the lists that are relevant, right?
Because this is it, right? I figure like my logic behind net listing is if it's something that people enjoy doing, fine, more power to you. Enjoy the game the best way you enjoy it. It's not something I've been keen on. Just apart from anything, because for me, logically, like, and I know a lot of people in the chat will have the same idea. Because I know we're very lucky around where I am to have a very diverse meta. But I feel like by playing a net list, you're playing something that's already probably on the decline a little bit. Because the more popular it is, the more people are going to build to counter it.
Exactly, yeah, that is a big thing. Playing anti-meta and anti-stratting is a thing, right?
Yeah.
And that does work. In particular, like when I was playing Genestealer Cult were the anti-strat to Chaos to Imperial Knights.
Yeah.
And at the time, the meta was Imperial Knights. The number of events I went to that were like 5-game events, and I played Knights 4 out of the 5 games. And I'm playing GSC, I just walk through them. And that's just a thing, right?
Now, to be fair, we fell foul to that in the team tournament we did last year, which is the fact that we specifically brought a pylon, because we had no options because we were Necrons, but also because we were hoping to play into a bunch of Knights, and we didn't play a single Knight list, even though there were loads there.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen, right? But there's also once you get deeper into anti-meta building, like where you're playing to beat other people.
We were pros, that's true, Ian.
Yes. Yeah, well,
Team Shiny Boys for life.
You do get to that point at some stage where you're building a list to beat the anti-meta list. But you also get to the point where like you start building to beat players rather than building to beat lists. Like I've had events before. I've done it to people and they've done it back to me. Like I went to an event in Lincoln and I won the first 2 Lincoln GTs,
God,
right?
Imagine going to Lincoln.
I know, right? Lovely place.
Sorry, if I'm from Lincoln.
Imps Gaming, really good gaming club, actually.
It's probably a good thing about it.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I won the first 2 Imps GTs. And for the 3rd Imps GT, there's a chap there called Nathan, very nice guy. And he built a list and he just went, I don't care anything else about this event. My Iron Hands Flyer and Artillery list will beat James's GSC, and I don't care about the rest of the tournament. All I have to do is get to playing James.
Did you
and
play
he
him?
turned up, yeah, in the final.
Oh.
Because he built and he made sure his games finished after mine so that he could see what my score was and avoid me for the final. There was another guy there called Malik. Me and Malik are both sort of top 5 UK ITC players, and Nathan didn't want to play Malik because Malik had a counter list to his. So he manipulated his score, and I don't mean this isn't anything dodgy. There's nothing wrong with it, but he intentionally made sure all his games went right down to the end, to the last 5 minutes on the clock, and he waited till me and Malik had got our scores and made sure he never played either of us. He stayed below the pair of us, and he manipulated it so we played each other, knowing that my list beat Malik's. And once I'd knocked Malik out for him, I played him in the final.
Is this Malik Blishtar, by the way?
No, it's Malik Amin Rubio.
Who's Malik Blishtar? I feel like
no idea.
I can't tell if that might be a joke. That might be
Possibly.
a Yu-Gi-Oh reference.
I've never heard of it.
I don't know, but I do want to.
I don't know who Malik Blishtar is.
But is also Rob says how many layers can we go into the anti meta? I think
reasonably deep. But like, yeah. But I've
So what we're saying in the anti-meta list is that every list falls on that chain somewhere, right?
yeah,
So 300
and it's
grots is
just
the anti-meta is the anti-list to something, which is the
yeah,
anti
of course it
something.
is.
So one day, if I keep
Yeah.
playing 300 grots, statistically, I will be
I
in the next
mean,
step in the anti-meta, right?
one of the top 8 lists at Clutch City was 7 Custodes Dreadnoughts. 300 grots is probably the anti-list 7 Custodes Dreadnoughts because you just obsec them and they can't possibly kill you.
To be fair, I don't know you can get. Ian has suggested that 300 grots is the anti-meta list for the 290. Okay, fair. I think there's lots of
Possibly.
iterations. Is it
But
the
like
inevitable anti-meta to my marriage? How do I ask? Love? Oi, how many grots before you divorced me? She asked how many I've got currently, just under 2,000. Apparently 2,000 is the divorce point.
oh god, we're treading that line.
Now I need to make a decision about what's more important. Love, look at me. Yeah, no grots. If we
that
get
number,
a,
that grot number might be dropping by the minute.
I'm surprised it was that high. How do you feel about Necrons, James? Are there any strats or units you think are being overlooked? Because I think Necrons, like from my professional opinion, Necrons are the best codex ever written because you can make pretty much any build out of them. You can pretty much probably use any unit.
Um,
I know you haven't played a lot of Knights because obviously you've been homebound.
yeah, I've only looked at Necrons sort of on the surface, so I probably haven't found anything that's being overlooked at the moment because I'm overlooking anything because I've only really looked at the top stuff. Once I start playing more, I'll dive a bit deeper into them. But as I'm kind of with Larks on this one. The Necrons at the moment are a very, very solid book. I think they're not the best book ever. I think that in terms of internal balance and longevity, they
Yeah,
are. They're
yeah,
really, really good because everything is viable, which tends to mean that
yes,
you get a list that book that lasts a long time.
yeah. By best,
When
I
you
don't
get
mean it'll win every
these,
tournament. I mean, yeah, exactly that.
I think
Like,
it's up there. I certainly think it's up there.
mhm.
I think your best books right now are probably Sisters, Necrons, Death Guard, Dark Angels, something like that.
Which is weird because sisters are doing really well in a meta where they're the only
Sisters are just cheating.
yeah, but they're one of the only ones that don't have a new book yet. Because I think all the new books are building in a nice pointy way towards things like Death Guard.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Sisters do have a new book in terms of playtime though,
well,
because
true,
they
yeah,
came out. You played them for about 6 months,
and
if
then
that,
Knight.
probably less, and then everyone got locked down and they never got found out.
Fair.
So I think Sisters will get found out.
Mm.
I don't know what'll be the thing to do it. I think the mechanics are really, really strong. I think they're really cheap, which is always a big thing. Like points efficiency is a thing. And I think they're so reliable. And in terms of tournament winning armies, that is the key factor. You can build a list that will absolutely smash someone 5 out of 6 games, and in your 6 game major, you don't win the major because you lost 1 in 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sisters are so reliable, and that is what makes them brilliant. And if you look at the 4 books I've just named as the best 4 books, Death Guard, super hard to kill, super reliable. Dark Angels, super hard to kill, super reliable. Necrons, just relentless. They don't do anything flashy, but they just continually pound away. And Sisters just pick their dice rolls, which makes them so reliable. They never get diced. So they're your major winning lists at the moment. Tyranids are very good right now, but they're a little bit swingy because they're a bit fragile.
You heard it here first, folks.
Demons are very good at the moment, but again, they're swingy because you bring 2 Keeper Secrets, someone has a good first turn shooting phase, you don't have 2 Keeper Secrets anymore. It's a thing. Which is the same Tyranid problem. It's exactly the same thing. Replace Keeper Secrets with Demacairons.
Yes, Moku, start on your Indomitus half. Join the shiny revolution.
Genuinely, you can do a lot worse right now if you're looking at competitive 40k and wanting to get into. Particularly, Necrons are quite a nice beginner army, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to Necron players. There's a lot of clever stuff you can do. You can really elevate the game with tactics, but at the same time, you can also kind of throw 60 warriors and a Silent King on the board, and half the time it's just going to do its job. And you can kind of just stand there and let it do its job.
I feel like Necrons versus Death Guard is going to be very much like that episode of Pokemon where it's just two Metapods just facing off against each other. Yeah, so this is a point. I want to reference this, sorry, I will come back to that, but Mediocre Modeler said, no, they're not starting a Sisters Army. Mediocre Modeler is my friend who claims to be anti-meta, but played Catch and Murder Ball, and is now building a Sisters list, and everyone kind of forgives him because his army's really pretty.
Just own it. Don't claim that you're not playing the meta list. Just go play the meta list. I've said to you tonight, I am a big competitive player, right? I have lists that got net listed, a lot of them. Basically, the Genestealer Cult list that you saw for the entirety of 8th edition after the Codex came out was either my list or Nick Nanavati's list, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing. And that's fine. You can own that.
Yeah.
And I've already stated on this show, I don't know enough right now to be creating the crazy Nathan list. I'm going to basically play Morrisolli's list.
Yeah.
I have a small tweak that I'm making to it, and then I'm going to play test it, and I'll probably make a few more tweaks.
But you're also going to do a thing where you make it really pretty so people forgive you.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is it. Like, my only issue with people who netlist, well, there's two issues. Firstly, don't claim you did all the work.
Yeah.
Give credit where credit's due. Or even don't give credit where credit's due necessarily. You don't have to go and say, I'd like to thank Sean Naden for writing my list. You know, that's not how that works. Unless you actually paid someone in a list writing service. You don't have to credit the person who wrote it, but don't go around saying how clever you are because you came up with it, right? You just look like a bellend when everyone realizes that you didn't.
Yeah.
But also, don't be that guy who turns up with a list that they spray painted the night before and daubed 3 colors on so it was legal.
Yeah. And
like if you're going to chase the meta and you're going to net list and stuff, put a bit of effort in, make it look pretty.
We were talking about this the other day. Also, yes, you're absolutely right. Like Imperium will be twisting my arm. Although I'm a bit pissed off that we're not getting it until late summer, but it's fine. I'll put up with it. But we were talking about this the other day about kind of the respect you show your opponent, especially at a tournament, by doing not just by being not a dick, but also by having an army you've put a bit of effort into, or at least it looks reasonable on table.
I think the way that you phrased it there is important. It's an army you put a bit of effort into.
Yeah.
Because not everyone's a Golden Demon painter.
I'm not.
Not everyone's a master converter. If turn up with an army that you legitimately bothered to paint.
Yeah.
And I know that you, and this is not a dig at you.
No.
But I know that you have your Necrons. I think you painted the whole thing like a weekend with a sponge.
Yep.
But it's effective. It works as a scheme, and clearly you bothered to put the effort in to do it.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. Like my LVO list from not last year, because last year was it last year? Yeah, last January.
God.
Last January. Yeah, I know, right? So about 15 months ago, it arrived in shrink wrap a week before I boarded the plane, and I built and painted the whole thing with contrast. Pretty much just contrast. In the week before I got on the plane, right? But I did it all with an airbrush. It was all contrast over metallics. And basically, I had a tint of metallics army, and it was a very, very effective scheme. And the judges came round and they proper got in close and inspected my army. And I went over to talk to him. I was like, "Right, lads, go on. What have I done? What's illegal? What's dodgy? What you're not happy with?" Because the LVO has quite strict hobby rules, like base size and stuff. There's a chart. Everything has to be on the right base. That sort of thing. I was thinking, oh bloody hell, if I just rush something and put something on the wrong base or something. And they turned around to me and went, "Have you brought a display base? We want to put it in the best painted." I was like, "Are you fucking kidding? I painted it with contrast in a week."
I think this is it. I think it's go on.
But the point is that I did speed paint an army to have a meta list, but as long as it looks like you tried, that's it. It's respect. It's
because there's one of the things I love about 40k. It's one of the things I personally can't go on with tabletop sim. I know lots of people do, and again, your hobby, enjoy it. But I like having kind of the armies on the table and the dice, and I like the look of it. And looking down on a game where both armies, the standard I always go for my armies is from 4 feet away, does it look cohesive and does it look painted? Does it look
Yeah.
reasonable enough? Which is my thing. Like, it's not like I've sprayed it and then daubed a few colours on it. Like, my grots are, I mean, you probably can't see them at all, but, like, they're literally contrast, 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 and then silver. Like, but the point is, when there's loads on the table, they will look like they're cohesive. Also, Tonga, talking about, so Mediocre Model is the guy who painted my Deathwing,
Yeah.
which I know you've seen. And I, like, again, commission painting, if you want to get your stuff commission painted, get it commission painted. Like, I
Yeah.
wanted my Deathwing
Again,
to look good.
that there is no obligation whatsoever to paint anything yourself.
Yeah.
The obligation is to have your army painted.
Yeah.
And no matter how bad of a painter you are and how much of a rush job it is, as long as it is painted so that it is vaguely cohesive and there is color on all of it, it's better than playing against grey plastic, right?
Yeah. And
That's
sometimes,
just a fact.
yeah. And club nights, club nights where people bring grey plastic and they're trying to
Of course,
fine. But it's something.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. At my local club, I've literally played games with bases that I've written on.
Yeah.
Because I'm testing out a new list before I have everything built, even.
And I just think there's just
like, if someone has paid to be at an event,
yeah,
and if you go to a tournament, everyone there bought a ticket.
Yeah.
Which means minimum someone's paid a tenner to be on the table with you.
A Squirtle 10 is a Redemptor proxy. I kind of like that. I feel like, that'd be... Now imagine that. Imagine a Tau army. No, an Eldar army where all of the models are Pokemon. So you could have a unit of Fire Dragons, which is like a Charizard and some other fiery ones.
Yeah,
sorry,
but like, and again, that's kind of funny. And as long as everyone knows, as long as
that'd be amazing if just there were type weaknesses.
Yeah, and as long as everyone's in on it, like you used a Squirtle Teddy as a Redemptor proxy, fine. As long as your opponent doesn't mind. I mean, in a tournament you might get called out, but like as long as everyone's in on the joke, it's fine. It's not a problem. Speaking of that, there's a guy called Alex Harrison, who is played for England a bunch of times. Very, very serious competitive player. Like 2 years ago, he was in the final of the LVO. That level of serious player. And me and him played on table 2 of a major. And he had a Leviathan Dreadnought. And he had the proper model. He had a Leviathan there with all the proper guns. And the guns were blue tacked on. Because he hadn't decided which ones he wanted yet. And this was an event that was a bit of a warm-up for LVO. And he said to me, I didn't know if I'd have the Leviathan in time. So I did get a proxy approved by the TO. It's like, right, what's the proxy? And he brought out a Mr. Potato Head that he blue-tacked autocannons to the side of.
That's amazing. I mean, as long as it's right silhouette.
Yeah, at which point I said to him, put that on the base for playing with Mr. Potato Head.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, and it's fine, and it's a giggle. And that was table 2 of a major.
Yeah.
Like, that was a 150-person event. And we were... I think both of us could still technically win the event at that point.
Nice.
And it was just funny. It was a giggle. Like
a Toy Story army would be great.
Yeah, Toy Story army's cool. I have seen a Imperial Guard army where they're all the green soldier men.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Go on, sorry.
But yeah, this is the whole. As long as everyone's in on the joke, everyone's in on the gag, and no one's upset about it. Like that level of effort. I did not kill Mr. Potato Head. I actually got absolutely railed that game.
I mean, to be fair, it was a Leviathan Dreadnought in 8th edition. Fair.
Yes, it was rough.
I've had a similar argument, just a slight tangent. I have made some bits which I printed, although I need to finish up, to make my smaller bucket into a stomper.
Yes,
and a lot of people got very, very cross about it. Like, that can't be a stomper. And I was like, actually, it's the most WYSIWYG stomper you'll ever get because it had all the guns. Yep. It was the right height. It was the right width. It fit on the right base size. And as I pointed out to them, my stomper could hold 30 grots and their stomper couldn't. So technically speaking, incredibly WYSIWYG. But this is a really interesting point. So,
it's kind of that thing where I've had some wacky out there conversions in my time. And I also, if I'm taking them to a serious tournament, I'll either get in writing from the TO that it is an acceptable conversion, because then you're protected. And if your
Yeah.
opponent decides they're not happy about it, you go, well, the TO is happy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then you phrase it a bit nicer than that, and everyone goes about their day, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing is that you're not trying to pull a fast one on anyone by having a dodgy model, right?
And generally, when they, just so people know, when they're looking for something, they're looking for the right base size, a reasonable approximation of what the thing is, and then so if it's got the right kind of guns and stuff on it, and then silhouette, right?
Yeah, it's right base size, right approximate size, and clear visibility of what everything is.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the Mr. Potato Head example, he was the same size as Leviathan Dreadnought. He had auto cannons blue tacked to his arms to represent the storm cannons.
Yep.
And he was on the right side base. Fair enough. Carry on with your day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
no
is a really, really helpful segue into something I want to talk about, because again, I don't want to keep banging on about the rep that Compay has, but Compay can have a bit of a bad rep, a place where you go and talk about it. And I think actually a lot of we'll come on to the war rig in a minute. But yes, because I will show you a picture and we'll work out because it's very long. But I think there's ways around it.
I think I have seen this, but you start getting into issues because of the sheer length of that thing.
But I wonder, there's probably a way around it. Like I don't know, we'll work something out. But
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think the thing people forget, some of the most casual people I've ever seen game and have talked about and heard stories about gaming are people who are really good. Because like we were talking about when you and Nanavati played, so Nick Nanavati is kind of like one of the most, Nick Nanavati is probably the most famous comp player that I've certainly heard of.
I'd say Nick is basically the poster boy of competitive play, especially in America.
And so you guys were playing just outside the top 8 of the LVO, and you spent, of your 3-hour game, you spent the first hour in the bar.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Explain the story, because I think it's important for people to know that kind of like, I think the reason that truly comp players aren't dicks is because you can kind of walk through a lot of the game.
Yeah, there's a few things to realize about like top table competitive players, and competitive play in general at that level. A lot of the time, you kind of already know what's going on.
I've just had the equivalent of title of your sex tape to issues due to sheer length.
Yes, I did consider.
Sorry, carry on.
Consider calling it myself.
Stop ruining our point, Lee.
I think my chat might be frozen. But yeah.
That was elsewhere.
Okay. But yeah, so competitive players, a lot of the time you know the results of a lot of the games, or you know what should happen in most games. But I've literally played a game that we almost scripted. Me and Tom Higginbottom from Team England, we were both England players, and we were both talking through matchups for the Belgium Team Championships, and then me and Tom played each other at an event the week after the Belgian Team Championships, having talked through all the strengths and weaknesses of our list the week before as teammates. And we knew exactly how that game went, and we basically talked it through, figured out what the score was. And then we played it, but we played it at a very fast pace because there was no tactical nuance here. We both knew exactly what was going on. And then he's a Scouser and I'm a Liverpool fan, and we went downstairs to the bar because the event was being hosted in a university, and we went to the student bar and watched the Liverpool game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Nick game, it should be said beforehand, like, you don't do this. This isn't like a thing that you just do with random competitive players.
No, yeah.
Me and Nick know each other. We've hung out. We've drunk. When he came over to the LGT, I took him for the weirdest Sunday roast you'll ever have.
Nice. Why was it weird? We'll come on to that. We'll come on to the weird.
We'll come back to the weird Sunday roast
later on in the show. Stick around. We're going to talk about the weirdest Sunday roast.
It was more an occasion than the actual meal.
Have I ever hyped it?
No, it was interesting. It was kind of strange. But yeah, so me and Nick paired with each other. Nick had just got out of a super stressful game. Like, he just had a real hardcore opponent and played to the whistle. No. And had Nick came over mega stressed. And he paired up to me, and we knew each other, and he came over and pretty much just hugged me immediately because he knew he was going to have a chill game. And he was not in the mood for a stressful one.
He knew it'd be that easier.
I mean, it really was. He was playing the Super Broken Orcs, and I was playing Index GSC.
Oh, fair.
This was back when Orc Looters were unnerfed.
Okay.
So we paired up and we got the mission, and basically Nick had come over and he had 300 orcs and grots, and they were all
That's an
marked with
okay
base
amount.
rims. Yeah, marked with base rims and clothes and stuff, and they were all independent units. You could tell what everything was beautifully when it was all laid out properly. And because he just got into a super stressful game that had literally gone down to, it was so close to the wire, and there were so many issues that the judges had to be called over for, that the judges put 2 minutes on both players' clocks when they ran out and said, "You have to finish this."
Fair.
So Nick was absolutely frazzled, and like he was the reason the next round was delayed. So he didn't get a 15-minute break between rounds. He literally finished the game, and a minute later was at the table with me. So he was stressed. He'd had a bad fucking time for 3 hours. It was rough, right?
Yeah.
But also, Nick had a lad with him who was the 16-year-old lad who had a video camera. Because this was when Nick was first starting up his coaching service, and he was filming.
I don't like where this is going.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Nick was filming all of his games for because he was just starting his coaching service and he wanted to analyze them all.
Fair.
And he wanted to do a series talking about the LVO, and it was also to showcase how competitive play can be fun. Unfortunately, he never actually finished that series because he then got hired by a different company and they didn't want to make it. So, but that's a different thing. So he had this kid. I think his name was Zach, and Nick's armor was a massive heap. And Nick said to me, "Look, James, you and me are both quick players. We both know this mission's weird and how it's going to play out, but we both know what's going to happen. We both know that you and me can play this game in 2 hours." And I was like, "I agree." At which point Nick turned to the 16-year-old Zach and said, "Zach, you're not allowed to come to the bar, are you?" And he went, "No, I'm 16. We're in Las Vegas." He went, "Yeah. All those models have movement trays. Just sort them all out for me. I'll be back in half an hour." And me and Nick left and went to the bar. Which in the LVO, the bar is about 400 yards away. And there's one dude serving, and there's usually a queue of about 100 people. It can take an hour to get a drink at the LVO if you do it at the wrong time. But because the round had just started, there was no one there because everyone's over at their tables, right? So me and Nick went, and the table next to me had another of the England guys on, Mike Porter, and the head judge from LVO came along, saw mine and Nick's empty table, and said to the table next to it, which had Mike on, "Where the fuck are these two? Like, chess clock should have been started 20 minutes ago. I've got to card both of them." And Mike just went, "They're at the bar. Like, it's fine. They'll finish." And the guy who, some of you, if you follow the Frontline Gaming stuff, you'll know him as Salty John. John Wehrmuller. Lovely guy. He's the head judge of the LVO. And he came and found us in the bar and basically gave us both a bollocking. To which our response was to try and buy him beer.
Did it work? No.
So we got summoned back to the table, which we turned up back at the table with a tray full of drinks. And John was like, "Right, you got to turn that chess clock on now, and you've got to start playing." And Nick just went, "James, do you agree that we don't need the chess clock?" I was like, "I do. Let's turn the chess clock off." And John went, No. Your top tables, you don't have the option. You have to play a chess clock. It's in the rules pack. Turn it on." So Nick turned it on and went, "James, yeah, my hour and a half has started. When we hit 0, we'll turn your hour and a half on." I went, "Yep, seems reasonable to me."
But I think
and John basically just shrugged and went, "I don't care anymore."
Now, obviously, that's obviously an extreme case, right? So obviously, like I say, you and Nick knew each other, but
do that. You don't do that unless you're properly comfortable with the person you're playing, right?
But I wouldn't.
As it happens, that game between me and Nick was, we knew that a lot of the combats were going to be very, very one-sided. So we were getting into positions where I'd charge him with 20 gene steals that were fully buffed and go, "Here's 100 strength 5 attacks hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. I reroll everything." And he'd go, "It's 30 boys. I'll just pick them up."
Yeah, fair.
And then next turn, he'd charge me with 60 boys into the 20 gene steals, and I'd go, "You got 180 attacks there, Nick?" And he went, "Yep, cool, I'll pick them up." And it was just that. It's that sort of stuff where, if statistically there's just no fucking way that the unit survives, don't waste your time rolling 200 dice. It was stuff like that. That's why it was so quick and why we were so confident we'd get through it, because we both knew we'd just do shit like that because it was, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. We have a question Because
Yes.
how do you feel about predictable terrain at tournaments? I'm all for balance and mirrored terrain, but I feel like tournament boards are too predictable. Probably more space to play in the game with more diverse board layouts. I can feel this goes one of two ways. One way in that if it's not symmetrical and balanced, the player who gets to pick where they deploy has a massive advantage. But then also, does it make you think more strategically if you don't have that?
I There's a complicated answer here, and it's based on the fact that there's a contract between the TO and the people attending the event,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a contract that's too frequently breached for my ideal world to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, in an ideal world, I would like non-symmetrical boards
Mm-hmm.
where both players have a reasonable amount of terrain to deploy conservatively if they would like to, and to play the game in a conservative fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But enough terrain that you can play aggressively if you should choose to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think asymmetrical boards matter because otherwise you might as well not roll for sides.
Mm-hmm.
It matters less in ninth because back in the olden days, rolling for sides gave you an advantage to who placed the first unit, gave you an advantage to who was going first.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, if you picked the sides, you went second, was usually how that worked. And at that point, asymmetrical boards really matter because you're losing the advantage of going first, therefore you should gain the advantage of better terrain.
Fair.
Because you get the pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, there's no correlation to that. You roll off for sides and you roll off for first turn. No, they don't relate to each other, right?
Yeah.
So you could very well pick sides and get the turn you want. Because you don't necessarily want to go first, right? You might want to go second.
Yeah.
More often than not on the top tables, you do want to go second, by the way.
Why is that? Just because you score last?
Control.
Or? Yeah, fair.
You score last, you can see what your opponent's doing. You get to play with more information than they have.
Fair.
Generally, you don't want to take the first swing in the fight because it usually doesn't knock the opposition out and they get to respond to it.
Fair point.
But yeah, so I think asymmetrical terrain, but you have to have asymmetrical terrain where the person who doesn't pick their sides doesn't lose because of it.
Yeah. Which I guess is a
Like,
fine line.
Yeah, and the reason that I say you can't do this and why mirrored boards are such a thing, mirrored boards take all the stress off a TO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if both sides are identical, no player is disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So no player can turn around and go, well, I'd have won if I'd have got the other side. This board's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the two sides of the boards are identical,
Doesn't matter.
yeah, you've got the same deal.
Yeah.
You know, which is why I think we see so many mirrored boards, is because it's the get out of jail free card for the TO.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have asymmetrical boards, you have to have boards that are sufficient for every army to not feel detrimented regardless of which side they get.
Because this is it, I've had to lay out terrain boards, and it's a lot harder than people think.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that it's something that I've laid out a lot of terrain, and you get people who are upset, and you get people. Sorry, I cannot figure out why my camera's so off center. I might just point. I think I'm actually going the wrong way now. Yeah, I really am. There we go.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, I've had boards where I've got feedback. I've not seen the Vanguard ones actually.
They are, yeah. So Vanguard are really lucky in that a lot of our terrain. We have about 40 boards of terrain which were made by Lee. Help me out. I can't remember what the chap's name is. Basically, the guy who is now either the head or one of the key board designers at Games Workshop now.
Okay.
So that we have lots of very big, Paul, someone I can't remember his name now. But yeah, it's lots of very big.
Vanguard is in like your
Club,
Vanguard's your Bristol.
Yes,
event.
sorry, yeah, excuse me.
So I see Vanguard. I immediately think Vanguard Tactics. Stephen Box is coaching, and he runs events.
Okay. Yeah. No, so as we're very lucky to have some really excellent. He's a world builder for Games Workshop. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, you have to come down so I can beat you in my home terrain.
Yes, I do. I would not consider, no disrespect to this Paul guy, I'm sure he's very, very good at his job. I would not consider Games Workshop the gold standard of tournament boards.
I think you're right, Spike. I think there is something. I think so. I guess
this is my in an ideal world where every board had adequate terrain and it was laid out correctly to benefit both armies. I would have non-mirrored terrain.
Yeah.
but the problem becomes that people will complain because the shooty army doesn't want the guy. You do see evenly matched terrain in history, though.
Hmm.
That is definitely a thing.
I
There
feel
was
like,
a
I wonder whether when G-Dub started introducing some of the terrain features that you could bring, which I feel like hasn't gone as well as they would hope, I wonder if that's kind of what they're hoping for. Because, yeah, I think historically, I think certainly people choose to have battles where there is relatively even trade, but people try and make the best of it as best they can, which I guess is kind of the middle
yeah,
ground. But yeah, I think you're right. That there's I think terrain can be quite lazy for mirrored boards. A lot of places you go, like a lot of tournaments you see, a lot of games you see will be. I have a set of craters and a building and a piece of a line of sight blocking terrain in
yeah.
my board, and that's it.
I think there's an issue that sorry, I've been
That's right.
um
Yes, corner runes everywhere. Again, I think corner runes everywhere is a matter of convenience. They're the easy
yeah.
thing set to make.
Corner runes are very easy to make. They're very affordable. They're very, very readily available. They're very easy to paint, and they're very, very effective in 40k.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the most useful piece of terrain on a board for 40k, it's a corner rune,
Mm.
and everything can interact with it. Um, but yeah, yeah, I get your point,
Yeah.
Spike. But like, 40k armies aren't matched. The terrain is often matched in battle.
Yeah.
And but then the armies wouldn't be, which is also the case in 40k. You have unmatched armies and reasonably even terrain. But yeah, I actually like corner runes.
A board of just imperial statues.
God.
How
Um,
how do you feel? So I know that obviously your ninth ability has been hampered due to COVID. What your okay? So I think when the new terrain rules came out, there was a lot of panic. People were like, "Oh my god, this is going to be awful." There's so many things to remember. I feel like as it's settled down a little
it's
bit,
simple.
I think people have realised that actually you see the
The
same one
rules are
several times.
functionally very similar to what they were in eighth.
Yeah,
There's a couple of little bits and bobs about forests, but everyone always forgot in eighth that forests were -2 to charge already. People acted like the -2 to move and stuff was huge for forests, and actually they were always -2 to charge. They just everyone forgot that was a thing.
yeah.
Um,
In my experience, a
where
lot of people just looked at Forest and went, "Play it as ruins," and they went, "Yeah, fine," and
yeah,
carried on.
well,
Which,
well that was the old joke about 40k and eighth edition, wasn't it? Every
yeah,
piece of terrain was a ruin.
yeah,
Because it was the only piece of terrain whose rules worked.
yeah,
um, which led to some ridiculous encounters, particularly for frontline gaming, for LVO and stuff, for LVO and Barrier Open and stuff, where you had the illustrious magic box,
yes,
where played as a ruin because there are no functional rules for a building, and you end up with really stupid situations where units were completely uninteractive. You have mortars firing through solid ceilings. It was just dumb.
Now that
But it
was
was
very
also the best way to play it because
yeah.
like it was the only way to play it. And I agree, magic boxes were dumb. I was also a Gene Stealer cult player whose army was very fragile and wanted to hide from people. So I quite liked magic boxes in a competitive sense because they worked for me.
It worked really well for me in one game because I managed to hide a character in my opponent's deployment zone because all they had on the board was flyers and a couple of fire prisms. So I
Yeah.
just stood my Cryptek who was scoring points every turn in the magic box and like, and what?
Yeah. I have done all sorts of shenanigans with magic boxes that people are angry about. It's a thing, but like I'm glad they're not a thing anymore because they were dumb. They were also the best way to do that rules interaction because the alternative was make them impassable. But with the amount of magic boxes that people had on tables, you just made like 10% of the board uninhabitable for everything,
Yeah.
and it just killed combat armies because there was just only open fire lanes to walk enemies, which was silly. It was silly the other way as well, but generally shooting ruled 8th edition, therefore give combat armies some help.
Yeah, fair.
And shooting generally rules most editions. Ninth, seemingly not too much. Not long range, sit back and gunline anyway.
Is
The
that
missions seem to stop it.
this is it? Is that because the interaction with objectives?
Yeah, it's the fact I have issues with the ninth missions because I
that
find them
they
very samey.
Yeah.
And I
They
think
basically took 2/3 of the ITC missions and ignored the good ones, right?
not ish.
That's a very
They,
salty way
they
of putting it.
yeah, what we're doing is playing Nova missions.
Hmm.
Like what we have is almost exactly Nova missions. I disagree. The mission secondary should be mandatory because a lot of the mission secondaries are unplayable for half the armies in the game, and if you make those secondaries mandatory, you remove armies from playability, which is not something you want to do. I think if the mission secondaries were more functional, I agree. I think you should make the mission secondary mandatory. We're back into the ideal world again here of terrain should be asymmetrical but benefit everyone. Mission secondaries, every mission secondary should be compulsory, but it also should be achievable by every army.
Yeah, fair.
And by achievable I mean like every army that you put out should be able to score 10 points on it. Not everyone should be able to max it out. That's fair enough. It should be hard to max out a secondary. But if from the word go, without your opponent's interaction, you can't score 10 points on that secondary, which is the case for a bunch of them.
It's a bad secondary.
Yeah, it's just pointless. Like there are some that are ludicrous as well. Like I was playtesting Custodes for a while. The mission, can't remember which mission it is, but there's one which is minimize losses, where you score 15 victory points if you have more than 75% of your units left. And if you split a unit up into multiple units, it counts as an individual unit. So at the start of the game, let's say I have 10 units, and I have a unit of Alaris Custodes of 10 Custodes, and on the final turn, I spend 1 CP to turn them into 10 one-man units of Custodes, I score 15 VP. And you just go, that's stupid. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. And you can do that by going, I'm going to count on my units at the start of the game because I'm Space Marines, and now I combat squad everything, I have double the units.
Yeah.
And it's just, there are, it's okay for them to be a bit lopsided, but they are way too lopsided at the moment. But the same is true of most secondaries, why it's important to have a lot of secondaries to choose from. I personally don't think there are enough secondaries at the moment. I feel like Oath of Moment is too easy currently.
Which one's Oath of Moment?
The Space Marines special one. I feel like that is currently too big an advantage to Space Marines, but that's because they have their own codex. I think once every army has their own codex, we're going to start seeing that balanced out a bit.
Okay, so it's have units in the middle of the board, or destroy a character vehicle monster, or have no one fail morale check. Which, yeah, okay, fair. Basically guaranteed one a turn.
Yeah.
So basically by having two... by having... I feel like it's one of those ones, like you say, could be nice and flexible, because you can kill... And I think it's a conversation we had at the start of 9th, how all of the objectives basically fall into the idea of stand somewhere or kill something.
Yeah, well, functionally, that is all you do in 40k. Every single objective in 40k, bar none, all of them do this, require you to either stand somewhere or kill something. When you break it down, that is all they require you to do. And you can build armies to stand somewhere or kill something very, very well. Yeah, I think that you shouldn't be able to use two different codex secondaries. I think that once you have... you are either Codex Space Marines, in which case you use Codex Space Marine secondary, or you are, for example, Dark Angels. I haven't actually looked into this. I don't know if Dark Angels can use the Marines ones, but just for an example. And if you are Dark Angels, you can use the Dark Angel secondary. You can't use both. I think that should very much be a thing. But I also just think that the main secondaries for the game need looking at, because there are very, very clearly bad choices and good choices.
Hey, Lex. Lex is coming in, just dropping a grenade. Hey, we should always play Age of Sigmar, Snake Leads for the win. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
That's probably true of the Space Marine Codex, to be honest, though, Rob.
Yeah, Space Marines are just powerful at the moment. And I mean, if you want to play Space Marines, go play 40k on easy mode, do whatever you want to do. No one will actually respect you for winning anything, it's fine.
Play the armies you want to play.
Yeah.
Space Marines are designed to be an easy, accessible route into the hobby, which
Marines
they definitely are.
Yeah, Space Marines are easy mode 40k. It's a thing, but it's fine. Don't ban Space Marines. Don't ban anything. Just make it so that everyone has an equal opportunity in the game. But that isn't, again, that's idealistic, because when you bring out a new codex, it tends to have a power boost, and it tends to counter things already in the game. Necrons are very good against Marines. So Marines are kind of...
Lizardmen are very pretty.
Yeah. Marines are very strong, but a lot of the new meta picks are edging them out.
Which is nice, because Marines have been on top for what
Yeah.
feels like forever, because obviously we had COVID lockdown.
Marines just were on top for a very long time anyway.
Mm.
And Marines were 2 on top.
Yeah.
There was a very, very clear distinction in 8th edition, which was when everyone was upset about Eldar being too good or Knights being too good, and their win percentage was like 54, 55%. And then Marines came out, and like Iron Hand's win percentage was 85%.
Yeah.
And you just went, that's ridiculous. There was a huge distinction from when the game was, oh my god, Eldar Flyers are a bit broken, to no one should play anything but Marines.
I feel like as well
that broke the game. It made it unfair.
Yeah, I think Marines were kind of Necron Codex done badly in that you could throw a dart at anything and make a reasonable army that would win really realistically. Whereas Necrons is you can build a good list.
Necrons can build a good list. What do we think about secondaries that stack? I think secondaries at the moment are fundamentally flawed. There was a thing. Basically, the secondaries idea is based on Nova and ITC secondaries, right? ITC secondaries specifically could never stack. It was in their rules.
Oh, so if you killed a character who was a psychic, you had to pick which one you scored.
Correct. Okay. I mean, those weren't secondaries, but
yeah, realistic.
But like you had, let's say you had Old School, and Old School was literally the old ones. It was Slay the Warlord, First Blood, Linebreaker, and Last Blood for 4 points, 1 for each one you did. If you also had the one that was kill characters, I think it was still called Assassinate. No, it was called Headhunter. If you had the kill characters one, if you killed the Warlord, you had to pick whether you got a point for killing the Warlord or a point for killing characters.
That makes sense.
And that was a thing. And secondary shouldn't stack. Do you want to see a Games Workshop version of Gangbusters? No. Gangbusters was a very, very specifically designed secondary to block out particularly abusive units in the ITC.
What was Gangbusters?
It scored you points for killing multi-wound units, but specifically like high multi-wound units. So like Castellan robots, Grotesques, Talos, that sort of thing. Like your little 2-wound dudes weren't classed as multi-wound units. I think the correct way to do that is to grind them down just be wounds, not models.
Interesting.
So just do it as every wound you kill, divide it by 10 at the end, score that many victory points.
That'd be nice, because I find this is why, and controversial here, I'm going to try and play some kind of slightly more competitive orc lists with some grots at some point, kind of try and have a bit more fun on both sides, the list building and the other side. But I'm going to have a last hurrah, which will be a looted Warhound Titan, which I'll take to a tournament. And I think it's quite funny, because it doesn't give up that many secondaries. Like, it doesn't stop your opponent scoring many, but it doesn't give up many. I have a couple of pictures of boards here, which I'm going to show you. These are some of our cool, sexy Vanguard boards.
I mean, my stream's frozen again, but yeah.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it was originally 6+ wounds, and then the next season, it got brought down to be 1 point per 3+ wound model and 2 points per 5+ wound model, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. You do kill 9 Talos, it's fine. You just have to be playing horrifically abusive armies as well.
Yeah, fair.
If anyone was wondering, Genestealer Cult.
Is this just Roxors?
10 Aberrants.
Oh, okay, fair.
10 Aberrants will kill probably 6 Talos in their sleep.
On the arc of
crazy.
On the arc on the arc of points, I think at this point, if you carry on the distribution, 10 Aberrants is what, 3,500 points now?
Something like that. Yeah. They have, I believe, gone up 10 points per model each day since their existence.
Yeah, that makes which
is my understanding of them.
Which is fair.
Those are some pretty boards.
Yeah,
they are not necessarily the most competitive boards.
So using those boards as an example, so the one the one with the arch, that's very much kind of a big statement piece board.
Yes.
But yeah, so Thank you, Spike. They are. I don't know why I'm saying thank you. It's they belong to the club I play at. But yeah, there's some nice
Yeah.
stuff.
My issue with those two boards is one has clearly a massive line of sight blocking piece in the middle that kind of dominates the board too much. It's too favourable for combat armies.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one doesn't really have any line of sight blocking. It's got some small rocks, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's got so many forests that it will slow people down too much.
Now, to be fair, at that point,
so
people
that-
were probably just playing things as ruins.
Yeah, but like left side of the board is very, very shooting friendly. Right side is very, very combat friendly. And I think you want to not skew too hard to either of those.
But the terrain looks nice.
Looks amazing. But yeah, with regards to stacking secondaries and
Yes.
stuff, secondaries shouldn't stack. There should be more variety in what secondaries do. Secondaries should just be better. They're currently poor, very, very poor. Like you look at like the psychic ones, you would never really take any of them except for Abhor the Witch.
Fair.
And Abhor the Witch is specifically a non-psychic one.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, without them in front of me, I can't remember which ones are which, but there's some things that just, yeah, there's some where you look at them and just go, well, this whole section is just that secondary, but worse.
Yeah.
Like, why would I ever not take the top one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find before the changes to Bring It Down was basically that, especially given the meta at the time, at the start of 9th, of kind of like.
But like
having mech guns, Bring It Down was just an auto lose 15 VPs for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, actions are generally kind of difficult and not really worth doing for the most part. I think it's too punishing. The problem with actions is we have to bear in mind, to look at why GW loves actions so much, you have to go back to the origin of actions, which is engineers in the Nova Open. Engineers later became an ITC secondary, which is worldwide, but originated in the Nova Open about 5 years ago, and you had to take it in every single event. And that was fine, because it was the only one where you had to take it, and everyone knew it was a thing for the whole event, and everyone built around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that actions are half the secondaries, but they're easily blockable by people, and that they have so many interactions, and it's just so difficult to get actions to stick, they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bear in mind that the guy who currently writes competitive 40k tournament packs, Mike Brand, is the guy who's run the Nova Open from the very, very beginning, and it's no wonder that we have actions. Like, the Nova Open Engineers is Mike's baby. The missions are exactly the missions that you would have played at the Nova Open for the last 5 years. That they put the guy who runs Nova in charge of tournament 40k, and he went, let's all play Nova all the time. And that's okay if you like Nova.
I mean, I know that the GT, when you look at the... Oh, my stream's frozen again. When you look at the lists of people who win the Warhammer GTs and the placement lists, and you look at the ITC, when you look at the ITC stuff, I feel like you don't see a lot of overlap. Is that fair to say?
It depends. Like, Warhammer GTs are not the highest skill cap event.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm trying to get at, but diplomatically.
Yeah. I think generally if you see players who place well in the ITC at a Warhammer event, they're winning it.
Yeah.
Or they're very, very high up, right?
You went undefeated, what, 3 times a year?
No, I went undefeated like 6, 7 events in a row.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's
true.
I did a whole...
Our local tournament has had actions for many years.
Ah, cool.
Anyway, sorry. This is coming from Lee, who hates competitive play, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's... But yeah, like GW events now will play the same tournament pack, which I think is a huge step up for GW events, because rulebook missions were horrendous last few editions. They were so bad. So that's a big step up. But as someone who really, really enjoyed ITC, and in the end was playing more ETC, WTC, whichever
Mm-hmm.
one it was. They crossed over at some point at the end of 8th, but they were basically the same thing, because the WTC is the old ETC, for those who don't know.
Okay.
The
ETC
guys,
being European Tournament Circuit.
ETC was European Team Championships,
Yep.
which was also a mission type. The type that was played there became sort of a tournament format for everything.
Okay.
So you either played ITC missions or ETC missions.
Mm-hmm.
ITC was the ITC that you know about.
Yep.
ETC was rulebook missions tweaked so they made sense, plus Maelstrom, plus kill points.
Oh, I hate Maelstrom.
Plus tertiaries, and it was all amalgamated to get a huge, great score. And they were really complicated from the outside, and once you played them, it was very intuitive.
Okay.
They were very interesting. But yeah, the ETC collapsed in on itself, basically 40k. Not to go too deep into the politics of this, the ETC is a massive tournament that runs like 15 different game systems, of which 40k is one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to make changes to the way something is run, the whole governing body had to agree to change it.
Right, okay.
And basically 40k when we don't like the way things are running, and rightly or wrongly, whatever, I'm not getting into who argued for this. The ETC basically went, tough shit, we're doing it our way.
Mm-hmm.
And 40k voted to leave.
Fair.
They had their 40k exit, Brexit, whatever it is. 40k exit. And that became the WTC. So the guys who worked for the ETC running specifically the 40k bit left and now run the WTC, which is just 40k.
Fair.
And WTC is World Team Championship, which is an accurate name anyway, because the European Team Championship has included Australia, America, Canada, for as long as you.
So are you saying very controversially that Eurovision should be called World? Should we have let Australia into Eurovision?
Oh God, yes.
Why? That's I'm sorry, but I might have to cut the stream off here. The day that Australia were let into Eurovision is a dark day in European history.
My logic behind it is I don't care in the slightest. I could not give the slightest of hoots about Eurovision, but the more people are in it, the longer my wife is quietly drinking over there. And that's fine.
Fexit is good, but it also sounds like Gur's Carnifex list. So that's yeah. How long until 9 Carnifexes is competitive?
I mean, looking at the meta from the weekend at the Clutch City GT, which had like 9 Custodes Dreadnoughts as a list that went 5-1, and had Naden win it with his crazy Eldar list, and the lists were all over the place for that event. 9 Carnifexes might be good now. I don't know anymore. The meta's fucking wild at the moment.
Right, Tongward. Yes, the bucket stands for inclusivity, but there's a fucking limit, and that limit is Australia joining Eurovision. I will die on this hill.
Will you die on this bucket?
No, the bucket stands for immortality.
That's it, and inclusivity and immortality.
Oh, the bucket has stood for many things. I think in the very first bucket stream, it stood for the inclusivity of marriage at some point.
I'm pretty sure it did. I think I was here for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean, you can have a Eurovision debate another time. I don't care.
Unfortunately, this is a Eurovision fan stream now, so
okay.
Awkward.
I can tell you that the Eurovision Song Contest did feature in one of the tournaments I was in.
Amazing. Can't say.
In that, a big part of tournaments is the social aspect of them.
Of course. And
myself and MMX Mark and a couple of other Hull guys, we rented a house.
Shut up, Ray! All you do is come in here and taunt me. I'll ban you.
We rented a house for the Warhammer 40k finals, like the Games Workshop finals, a couple of years back. And at the end of a long Saturday, we were all very drunk because no one takes Warm World events seriously.
I mean, there's a bar right there with actually surprisingly good ale.
Yeah, I mean, this was in God, where the fuck was it? It wasn't in Warhammer World. It was when they hosted Warhammer Fest off site.
Oh, okay.
But it was somewhere. Fuck knows, I can't remember. But anyway, it was in a football stadium actually.
In Coventry,
That's the one.
in the
Yeah.
Rico.
So yeah, that's the one. So we'd rented the place and we were very drunk, and we basically ended up with a room full of people playing a drinking game where every time anyone made a heart symbol on Eurovision, you had to take a shot. And that was one of the best 40k evenings I've had in a long time. It was pretty epic. We also nearly killed Mark because he doesn't drink and he's heavily diabetic, and we fed him about half a bottle of Jägermeister.
Right. We are coming towards the end, and today I'm going to finish it effectively and not take 11 minutes to finish it. But before we do go, Ian has asked, you can fix one thing about 9th Ed 40k. What change do you make? And it can't be chucking out Space Marines.
No, I wouldn't go to any army. I think the missions are the biggest problem with 40k.
I think the biggest issue is that Stompers aren't 500 points.
It's an interestingly self-serving prediction. Do you work for the Tory party?
Zing.
But no, I think that you make the missions more interactive, because I think at the moment there is far too much time dedicated to standing in places and not dying.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, 40k is about movement skill and the ability to fight people. And you don't do that if you're trying to win at the moment. A large portion of lists are just, I'm going to stand over here and not die, and I don't think that's really in the spirit of 40k.
Is that, however, just to play devil's advocate, is that because with the list we've had most recently, Death Guard, who's that is their big thing, Necrons who like stand up, and Dark Angels who have their ridiculously broken constant transhuman physiology?
No, I called this when the missions first came out, like 9 months ago.
Fair.
The way those missions are written, regardless of some armies are better at it than others,
mm-hmm.
but regardless, I'll talk about that in a second. Regardless of what army you're playing, functionally the idea is still the same. The missions force you to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want to see one army be defender, one army be attacker, and one army have the objectives and another try to rush it, because I think that you get very skewed games, and I think that it favors certain armies too much. Again, you're trying for balance. I would love to see player-placed objectives.
Like the good old days.
It was a WTC thing. There was so much tactics in it. There's so much skill in playing 6 objectives, and both of you get 3, and you don't know who's playing on which side, and you're placing objectives to zone out where other objectives can be placed, because you can't place them in range of each other. And it's just so... And you could have basic rules on it. You can't place objectives directly in terrain like you can't now, that sort of thing. Like at the moment, you're not meant to have objective markers like directly on terrain, are you?
Mm-hmm.
You can hold them from behind walls because the radius on the objectives for the markers can't be on range. So you can keep those rules in place. So you can't just go, I'm going to put all the objectives behind this wall and win. You know, you could force it so that both players have to place one in each deployment zone, one each in the middle, that sort of thing. But player-placed objectives are so huge, and I think I think it adds a really fun tactical element to the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
What it does also do is add time to the game.
True. And I think this is why I like Ninth. I think what Ninth has done is it's taken a lot of time out of the game. It's been doing nitty-gritty. Like, lots of people like to talk about how they miss armor facings and blast templates, and part of me understands that, but also, it's just so much quicker now and easier.
For anyone out there who has ever said they miss blast templates, go on YouTube, look at the LVO 2017 final, watch Brett Perkins fire 58 blast templates for 2.5 hours, and then the game time out on turn 2.
I think
that was the final of the LVO. That was one of the best players in the world who had so many blast templates, he literally couldn't finish 2 turns.
What was he running that had that many blast templates? Just everything?
It was...
So I remember Limeras Executions had 5.
No, it was the Forge World, like, Chaos Guard. I can't remember what they're called.
Oh,
Lost and Damned or something?
Renegades.
Yeah, so he had like 100 plague zombies, so he could never go near his army, and then the whole rest of it was like immobile artillery pieces.
Oh,
and he just had like 20 Wyvern gun emplacements.
Yeah.
And it was just so dumb. But I did enjoy that his army self-deployed. because he'd bought a Sky Shield landing pad that all of the pieces placed on, and they were literally glued down.
Amazing.
And when he deployed his army, because you had to alternate units, he'd just go, "This is my first 20 drops," and put the Sky Shield landing pad down. Do 20 drops.
Fair.
And that was it. And it was so dumb. It was so ridiculous. I think they didn't put him on stream for the whole rest of the tournament because they knew that his army was just horrific to watch and to play again. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, it was that's why you should never have blast templates.
Yeah, fair. And this is it. I think they're a good thing until people are dicks about it or abuse it.
Yeah, and I mean, Brett won the LVO.
Yeah.
by using blast templates, and he knew what he was doing.
Because I feel like most good players, or people who are reasonable players, or were like reasonable people, you could tell pretty quickly how many things were under a blast template.
Well, this was it. He was playing against a guy I know quite well, who won an LVO a couple of years later, Brandon Grant, and they were speeding it. They were literally, because all of the templates spin off each other and stuff. They were literally placing it, and Brett was just saying, "I'm just going to place it. You just tell me how many hits. I'm not going to argue with you."
Yeah.
And Brandon was just going, "That's 6. I'll flip the same way. We'll call it 6 again. We'll call," and it just took so long to do, even with 2 players doing it properly and efficiently. And it was just so dumb. And like, I think credit where credit's due. I've slated a lot of the stuff GW does here in their missions and stuff. I actually think blast weapons work really well at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they have the right effect you want them to.
The only thing I dispute is they've got a couple of strange blast weapons. Like, there's a couple of weapons they've given the blast ability to, like the keyword, that probably shouldn't have it, and a couple of units that probably should have it but don't.
Can you think of any examples off the top of your head?
Mining lasers on Ridge Runners. It's a laser. Why is it blast? I also think that, and this is just my personal bugbear while I'm thinking about it. In fact, this is the one thing that I would change because I think missions is too much. Plasma receptors being blast kind of makes sense. It's a big glob of burning plasma. Like, that's going to splash. I kind of get that. Or are they not blasting? You're saying they should be. I thought they were. I could be wrong. I do think they should be. So I'm either entirely with you or entirely against you, depending on whether or not they already have it. The simplest thing that I would change, let's assume changing the missions wholesale is not a valid answer because it's a bit much. Why don't all flamers ignore cover?
Do they not?
No. The new flamers do. In the new books, most flamers have ignores cover now. But if you're a guardsman with a flamer, your flamer gets stopped by trees for some reason.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know why.
How would you think? Just make it a keyword.
Ignore. I mean, we're getting into dangerous territory here.
The fusion gun on Ghost Kills is a blast weapon. If you take the prototype version, it becomes heavy 6, not heavy D6. It's no longer blasting, can be fired in melee. Interesting point.
That is weird. I mean, to be fair though, Tau are kind of awful, so let's just let them have it.
I think so. The other weird thing it was suggesting with the Inceptors is the fact that they count as having 2 guns when it could just be because you can never not have a pair of them. Why isn't it just a pair of blah blah blah?
Whilst I agree with that, GW does have this thing of making rules somewhat WYSIWYG, and there is a history of models that have multiple guns just having that
like pair of So this thinks they're not that. So this is at the moment they are. They have
no.
Yeah.
What I mean is, like, for example, the Kelemorph.
Yeah.
He has an auto stub, a Liberator auto stub pistol or something it's called.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 3 of them. You get a profile for 1, then you get told he's got 3.
Oh, okay. My bad, yeah.
They have a habit, and that's a unique weapon. No one else in the Codex has that gun. They have a habit, and it's possibly just future-proofing because they might want to give someone else that gun at some point.
Yeah, fair.
I don't have an issue with a model that clearly has 2 guns having a profile and then telling you that you use it twice. I think that's fine. I don't think it's hugely detrimental. It's slightly annoying formatting, but I don't think it's particularly detrimental to the game.
So I feel like what is, though, and we might disagree on this, because I know that you're a fan of some of the Chaos, Lord Kavalos and such, is the kind of thing like the Repulsor that has 7 guns with all slightly different brackets, because I always lose track of which guns have fired and which ones haven't. Like, you could sit there and fire 20 repulsor guns at me, and like 10 and I might think you've been going on for a bit of a while, but I wouldn't ever quite know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the repulsor's just silly anyway. It shouldn't
Yeah.
have that many guns. But yeah, I am inclined to agree with you there.
At least we don't see him as much anymore. It's just, I get the principle of the thing. Like, it's a cool gunship, but yeah, just make them. Please, for the love of God, make like 2 or 3 consistent brackets so you can lump it all together.
They kind of are. There's a lot of strength 4 stuff and a lot of strength 5 stuff, and most of the time you can sort of roll a lot of it together.
Yeah.
People just don't.
I mean, against Scots, you could definitely can, because anything above strength for AP1 is a 2 to kill regardless.
But I do think I take exception to the repulsor anyway.
Yeah, fair. So ever since I had to march 100 Necron Warriors into 3 of the Iron Hands ones, 2 of which were healing back to 6 wounds a turn.
Yeah. My exception to it is -2 to charge.
Yeah, fair. Well, that's a strat now, though. Interesting.
I thought they all just had it. Do they not?
Not anymore. No, it's now. I believe anyway. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, chap. I'm pretty sure they've made that into a stratagem.
In that case, I fully retract my complaint, because my complaint was it's an anti-grav vehicle, the same as every other anti-grav vehicle in the game. Why the fuck are they the only ones that are -2 to charge?
Because no, I was going to be salty then, but this is a non.
Because Space Marines.
The bucket of grot stands for not being salty.
No. But no, it's I'm glad that they aren't, if they did get rid of it, because they shouldn't have been. They had enough things going for them.
Yeah.
I kind of have a thing with units where I feel like Games Workshop sometimes in unit designs
having a repulsor.
Having a repulsor we're fine with. Don't be that guy who turns up with 5.
Yeah.
But I do kind of feel like sometimes, especially with Space Marines, though that other armies are guilty of this, Games Workshop kind of doesn't know when to stop throwing the darts at the special rules board.
Yeah.
And you just end up with a unit. It's like, it's -2 to charge. Cool. What's it got? 10 guns. What else is it going to do? Transport things. And it's like, stop. Just let it do one thing.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the Dragon Ball Z issue, right? Everything has to be bigger and badder than the last thing.
Yeah. But I mean, you can make things bigger and badder. Just give it one really good rule. I'm not opposed to things being powerful. I'm opposed to like reading a data sheet and just being like, cool. That's a D&D character.
Like the Silent King. Now, I love the Silent King, and he's a statement model. I get he's a bit different, but he is a whole A4 page of rules.
I'm okay with it for the Lords of War, because I think they are big characters with big personalities, and that's fine. I'm more bothered when it's like, this is a transport. It's like, why does it have a page of rules?
Yeah. Let me just find the quote, because I do want to quote you directly. Do carry on talking while I try, because I do have one more question about that kind of rules thing.
What about the Astraeus? I think it's a cool forge model. I think it's really expensive now and kind of good. I think it was broken when it was Iron Hands, but we can't really hold that against it because everything was broken when it was Iron Hands. It's a cool model. Fair enough. I know it's the -3 to charge thing is probably what you're getting at. It shouldn't be. It's a grav vehicle, same as all the rest of them.
Okay. Talking rules glut / potential rules glut, how do you feel about the rules that Be'lakor have just come out with, which includes the opinion on ignoring invuln saves? And this is a direct quote from you to me yesterday at 15:32, do you still want to do things to it that Slaanesh would consider a violation of one's personal space?
Yes. I think ignoring invulnerable saves is absolutely fine as a rule. I think that it should be handed out incredibly sparingly, because invulnerable saves should be special and important. But everything else in the game has a counter.
Because what kind of has at the moment? So Nightbringer has it. Some of the assassins have it. So I feel like it's in a good place at the moment if they don't go over the top.
It's Nightbringer, Collectus or Caldus, I'm not sure which.
Calidus, and that's just ignore all saves.
Why do you believe it's too much on Be'lakor when you've never seen his stats, Tongra? Is going to be my response to that. We don't know his points cost, we don't know his stat line. If Be'lakor comes out and he has got the same stat line as Magnus and costs 500 points, I think he should ignore invulnerable saves.
Fair. It's good to defend.
Yes, I exactly think invulnerable saves have been handed out way too much, Rob. I think that's why having some ignore invulnerable saves mechanics keeps people honest. Because at the moment, a good portion of what competitive lists are Deathshroud Terminators and Deathwing Knights with their 3-up invulns and Storm Shield, sorry.
How so?
And I think that having Be'lakor, bear in mind that Be'lakor he's a Chaos Demon, and Chaos Demons are never the most popular list in the meta. Like, even if they're the best list, 1 in 10 people are running it, right? It's not Space Marines. You're not going to get 9 out of 10 players running it, right?
Yeah.
So Be'lakor is probably, if he's as good as everyone's complaining that he is, maybe he is. Maybe he is the new Magnus when Magnus first came out and everyone ran him. Maybe he is that good. You're going to face Be'lakor twice a tournament at most. Now, if you've built a sensible list that can deal with Be'lakor, that's fine.
I mean, at the moment, it's asking me mortal wounded to death, right?
Yeah, pretty much. If you're also like, he's probably got a 4-up invulnerable save and no armor. You can just point melter guns at him. He's going to die.
Yeah. I don't know if he'll point wipe more to the board, but at the same time, if they pitch him at the same level, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, this is it. Like, assuming that he comes in at a similar points cost, stuff like Magnus, Morty, the Silent King, which is somewhere in the 450 margin, somewhere around there, like 50 up or down, depending on what he's got. He'll have a 4-up invuln. He won't have armor. He's probably T7 because he's not going to be T8. Probably 18 wounds.
Yeah. He is going to get Nightbringer.
It depends how good a Psyker he is, because he's probably as quick as the Nightbringer, and if you can just fly away and smite him, the Nightbringer never fights him. But I had this conversation with someone about the unkillable Lord of Change, who was saying, "Oh, the Nightbringer will kill." It's like, no, he won't. The Nightbringer will get targeted, smited to death whilst they fly round and round each other, because the Lord of Change has no reason to ever go anywhere near him. But Be'lakor probably does have more of a reason to go near him. But yeah, it's. Firstly, I'm incredibly biased for 2 reasons here on Be'lakor. One,
remember this is a PG-13 chat.
I'm going to be sensible. My 2 logics are, 1, I have a massive Chaos Demon army. And I want a Be'lakor. 2, you cannot look at that model. Think of some of the bullshit rules that have been handed out to flying bricks to Space Marines. And then look at that Be'lakor model and go, my God, that thing deserves some good rules. Because no matter what armor you play, no matter what your bias is in terms of rules, you cannot look at that and go, that is an incredible feat of modeling.
That's how I feel about the Void Dragon. The only math I did about the Void Dragon before it came out was calculating that I need 7 to make sure that I can always see one wherever I'm sat in my house.
Yeah. Be'lakor is... The day that the Be'lakor model got released, like before we'd seen any rules about it, I believe I sent you a message. I certainly sent it to the England chat.
Yes.
And I said, no matter what that model's rules are, I'm buying one the day it comes out and I'm taking it to a tournament.
Yeah.
Like, it can be as bad as it wants to be. Like, if it comes out and they tell me he's got the same stat lines as Magnus and he costs 900 points, I'll still run one.
Yeah.
Like, it's gorgeous. I love it. Venereal disease is also underrated.
Going back slightly, do you think the issue with invuln saves is the same kind of thing? So I know you were a really big fantasy player back before fantasy exploded. Yeah. Do you think they've kind of fallen almost into the same trap they did with fantasy ward saves, where because everything ignored armor so reliably, like every army has so much, like a 3-up armor save is nothing now in 40k, right?
Pretty generally much.
Not. Like, it's all about now what's your invuln save and what's your and even to the point where now what's your ignore wounds save.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe
that's accurate.
They've painted themselves into a bit of a corner by making armor saves so redundant.
It's a much bigger conversation to get into. But I think 140k is going the direction fantasy was going in when they blew it up.
Do you think we'll get a blow up of the universe and start again? Because one of the things I love about AOS is
I think the Emperor will either awaken or die fully.
Yeah.
And the story will move on dramatically. and I don't think they're going to put us all on Square Base or anything silly.
No.
But I do think there will be a hard reset at some point, because if you just look at the big problem that Fantasy ran into, and this isn't a rules thing, this was Fantasy painted itself into a corner because it was so expensive for a new player to play. And to build a competitive army now, like, I think the most extreme example was when Abmech came out. I wrote what I still believe is the best Abmech list in the world. And it cost £980 to buy.
Is that because Cataphrome destroyers are like £35 for 3?
That the planes were too expensive, Cerberus Raiders were too expensive. And the Chaos Demons list that I want to play, just because it has 10 Beasts of Nurgle, that's £300 on Beasts of Nurgle.
Yeah.
And I think that GW is painting themselves into a corner again, where everything's getting bigger and badder, and you need more of them, and you're going to spam this and you're going to spam that, and you get to the point where it's like it's going to cost you £100 to buy a unit of something.
You look at Flayed Ones. Flayed Ones could be probably what. Hopefully, I was talking about this with Robin in our Shiny chat the other day. We're hoping that Flayed Ones might be £25, which for a unit of a box of 5 models that come in 10 to 20 is going to be, like you say, is going to be £100 for 20.
Yeah, and this is the problem. It becomes such a barrier to entry that they had to reset and make everything smaller again.
But AOS has done that really well. So I remember I ran some Ocelot Bone Reapers, and I had a 3-up rerollable armor save, which was like considered too cheesy.
Yeah, but like, and this is it. Like when 8th came out, they did sort of reset the game. And everything balanced out for a bit, and then it just escalated and escalated and escalated. And
the indexes were great.
The indexes were great. And they escalated, and I think around the point when everything had formations again, like the specialist attachments, was when it was pushing rules bloat too much. And then they went Marine, supplements, Psychic Awakening, and now we're about to start doing supplements again in 9th when everyone's not got a book yet. It's just... Games Workshop has this thing where it has to constantly be releasing, and books are a lot easier to produce than models. And they reach a critical mass where everyone's fucking sick of their editions because it just gets so silly of everything on everything on everything on everything. It'll reach a point where they have to hard reset again, and I don't think that point is too far away.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think? So I don't think it's unfair to say, and I think I understand the point in Primaris that they couldn't just go and invalidate every single Firstborn Marine. I don't think they'll do that for a while. But given they had to make Primaris something special, and that Space Marines were, like you say, Space Marines were scoring like 70-80% win rate consistently.
Yeah.
It's the... Do you think that's kind of accelerated this issue in that they've had to kind of... So, perfect example, I think it's 7th and 8th Fantasy. 7th, it was either 7th really quick or 6th really quick, because they released Chaos Demons. 7th. Chaos Demons were just impossible to beat. They were just absolutely insane.
Yeah,
and so they had to basically...
Like 93% win rate or something.
And so they had to basically write a new edition to deal with it. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's like stuff like, the...
Yeah, pricing is silly for some stuff.
Characters as well, being like 20 bit per character.
Pretty bad. They're getting better with the character thing because they are generally putting them in box sets now.
Yeah.
So you do have an option to get them cheap, and also like I know you might not necessarily want to go buy an Indomitus, but their Games Workshop aren't stupid. They're well aware that box splitting exists.
Yeah.
And they don't really do anything to combat it.
Yeah.
Which. Scalpers are another thing. We won't get into it.
I don't want to make this like I don't want to make it sound like we're whining about GW prices because that's boring and everyone does it. But
GW are aware that box splitting is a thing.
Yeah.
So they know that if you try hard enough on eBay, you can probably pick up a Tech Priest Manipulus for a tenner, not for the 20 quid they sell it for.
Especially, it's why I like the start collecting boxes. They have really good kind of quality in it.
But also because, like, if I were to go out and collect an army as a new player tomorrow. Like, if I own nothing, I'd pick the army that I like best and probably go buy 4 start collecting boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'd have 2 or 3 of a character I don't want. On eBay it goes. And that then helps someone who already had the army but doesn't want to spend 20 quid on the models. And Games Workshop knows that happens.
Yeah.
Right? They're not dumb. They know that that's how that works, and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
It functions reasonably well for them.
I think as well, I feel like their pricing kind of reflects the idea that the other thing you get a lot is basically everyone has access pretty much to a at least 20% discount at this point.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'd be really, really curious, and I don't think Games Workshop will ever release the numbers. I would be really, really curious to see how much of their sales goes through second-party retailers,
Yeah.
and how much of it is actually through their own stores at this point.
But then
Well,
I think it's been something that's changed a bit because I know I fell out of 40k 2010, 2011. Sorry, go on.
I don't mean their game stores, because their
No,
game
yeah.
stores have always been a sales.
Yeah.
They're not about sales. They're
No.
about marketing.
Absolutely,
Their-
yeah.
Their store has always been about bringing new people into the game. They've never really cared how much money the store actually makes. That's not its purpose.
No,
But
absolutely.
they're like, considering, particularly for the last year, would be a great example, because no one's bought anything from the shop, right? No one's walked into Games Workshop and bought a model.
Yeah.
I'd be really, really interested to know what percent was Games Workshop's web store and what percent was Wayland, Element, Goblin, Glasshammer. What percent was the 20% plus retailers, and what percent was actually Games Workshop's web store? I think that'd be a very interesting number.
Yeah. There might exist in shareholder document somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
interesting.
if you can find it, I'd be interested. But yeah, I think that would be very interesting. Do you know Bellacor's price, by the way?
I don't.
That was leaked earlier, allegedly.
I
Go on, let's play that game. Chat, get involved too. We'll give it a minute or two.
higher or lower. If you know, don't say. I want.
Go look at the Bellacore. Type in the chat how much you think that will be in Great British pounds.
See, I feel like I want to say 60, but I feel like it's going to be around 80.
Okay.
But then maybe I'm just pessimistic.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple of minutes for chat to have a look and a guess.
I mean, at the same time, I know that people would pay their firstborn.
Tonga from 65. 95 from Ray.
I mean, fair, the giant gargants were about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Magnus is 90.
Fair. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Magnus is 90. I think Morty's 90. I know Keeper of Secrets is 85. I assume the other Greater Demons are the same. Is Morty 85? Sorry, my mistake.
Right, we've got. So I think like 85, 90 seems to be the average.
The prevailing opinion.
Yeah.
That was also my guess. £105.
Oof.
Yeah.
That again, that feels like it's priced to be 20%, right?
It does, but it also feels
a lot.
Yeah, I feel like at the moment Games Workshop are looking at what is reasonable and then tacking a bit more on because they think they can get away with it, which they can.
Yeah, especially when Bellacor's such a nice model, they know people will buy it.
But like, 105.
But then, do you know what I'm going to say? And so, I will ban you, Green Goblin. Don't set Ray off.
To be fair, for those of you who have read the lore on Bellacore, he really did do nothing wrong. He kind of got screwed over.
It wasn't it. Basically, he was just all the gods were like, "We'll give you all our power," and then they couldn't decide who got to keep him at weekends.
Kind of, yeah. He was the original Everchosen.
Okay.
Like it's Warhammer Fantasy lore that he's more prevalent in, and then he just sort of is still old and bitter in 40k. But yeah, he was the original Everchosen. He had Archaon's sword and he had the crown of the Everchosen, which Archaon now wears. His spiny demon crown that he's got is his demonic version of the crown of the Everchosen because the gods took it off him.
Oh, cool.
Same for the Blade of Shadows. The Blade of Shadows is basically built out of pure spite.
Nice. That's true as well, I suppose. Yeah, a character like that,
Yeah.
it's gonna, and this is why I don't.
I agree with that, but why is he 20 quid more than Magnus and Mortarion?
Yeah.
Is my counter argument to that. But yeah, Bellacor's lore is really, really cool. He is literally he was basically a demigod. And the Chaos Gods thought he was he basically got arrogant.
Be'lakor gets 4 birthdays.
Yeah.
4 birthdays for Christmas.
But he basically got a bit cocky. He basically said he was bigger than Jesus. He said he was bigger than the Chaos Gods and that he didn't really need them. and that he was going to overthrow the world by himself. He got very, very arrogant. And the Chaos Gods went, all right, then, we'll take all our power back, dickhead. Right at the culmination of his big incursion of chaos, as he was fighting at the time, whoever the emperor was. It was the emperor before Karl Franz. I can't remember who it was.
Not gonna lie.
No, but yeah, he was fighting like the emperor of the empire back in the old world. Literally in Altdorf, in the capital, chaos had overthrown the city, and the Chaos Gods were just like, yeah, we're going to suck all your powers away now and watch you flounder. And he did. And then he was made, in Avengers?
Yeah.
The Red Skull is made to deliver the thing he can never have with the Soul Stone. He's that guy now. He had to help Archeon along the way to get all Archeon's stuff.
That's very cool.
And he's also in the background of both Horus and Abaddon.
Nice.
Drachnien, I believe, was gifted to him directly by Be'lakor, but he's known as the Dark Master because he is the master of all chaos, basically.
I mean, he's very badass.
He answers only to the gods, and he's actively fighting all of them. Like there's lore of like before the gods took all his power off him. I'm pretty sure he just kicked the shit out of Khorne. Like just in the middle of the Chaos Wars, he was literally just beating up bloodthirsters to make a point. He was just a douche. He was, yeah, but that was when Be'lakor was banished. When Be'lakor had all his powers taken off him, and the comet struck Mordheim, he basically went and used what little powers he had left to be a douchebag in Mordheim because he didn't have enough power to overthrow anything else. So, and he wanted the power back.
Yeah, I will say just one last thing on the price debate, because I don't want us to be a salty price chat, because that chat is everywhere, and it kind of it is what it is at this point.
It feels a little high.
Yeah.
And there is always the element of, if you're not happy with it, vote with your wallets. I'm going to put it out there. I have a Glasshammer Elite subscription, so I get 30% of everything I buy. I'm buying one.
Yeah.
I've just told you all that I think the price is too high. Still buying one.
In Bristol, loads of our places will do 20% off as well. So it's going to be vaguely more affordable. I think the thing to balance with GW is the production cost on a model like that. I mean, I think it was the original Night Kit was just over £1 million worth of production costs.
The Baneblade was the famous £1 million one, yeah.
Yes, and so I do understand where the pricing comes from.
Although, fun fact about the Baneblade kit, cost them £1 million to make the original mold. On day one of release, they made that money back.
Fair.
Yeah, it's.
I bought one the first time it came out, and I put it together at about 12:30 a.m. in my local games workshop. But I think the other thing, and this is it, right? Okay, I'm not always happy with Games Workshop prices. Totally agree. But I think the reason I'm still here and the reason I will keep playing them that money is because at the same time, no one is routinely making as good a models in as good and easy as there's just no competition when it comes to models against other ranges. Like in terms of, I mean, it's fair. More so in the past year or so. 2 years.
I would say that they're losing their stranglehold.
Now, I think especially now, there's so many good CAD people and 3D printers. Yes. But that's a conversation for another day. We'll talk about it another day.
I think that they are losing their stranglehold, and I think that they need to be wary because they are in a world of Chinese recasters and 3D printers, which aren't replacing them yet, but that day is coming.
Yeah.
It's a way off, but it's coming, and they need to be aware of that. And they just need to be a bit more careful with their fan base. Yeah. Because there comes a point, like, I look at Be'lakor and go, I really, really desperately want that model, so I'm willing to pay for it. But I'm also in a position where I can afford to pay for it.
Yes.
If I'm 15-year-old me, I can't have that model.
Yeah.
You know, if I asked for that for Christmas, 15-year-old me would get laughed out of the house. You know, it's just not happening. And
now, it's fair, you did grow up in Yorkshire, and if Monty Python taught me one thing,
but my parents from Cheltenham.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're posh. That explains why you're so posh.
Yeah, I grew up in Cheltenham until I was like 10. Um, but yeah, I just think that it's the whole thing with fantasy where they're pricing armies to
Yeah.
the cost of entry is becoming prohibitive.
Everything has to have a big, bad, sexy thing, and that sexy thing is very expensive.
Yeah, and I don't mind, like, Be'lakor actually doesn't bother me.
Because one off, you need one, then you're
Yeah,
done.
I think that's fine. The things that bothered me more for price terms are things where stuff like the Beast of Nurgle.
Yeah.
Why is that dude 30 quid?
Yeah. Especially when you need 2 or 3.
I mean, you need 10.
Well, okay,
Like
yeah.
the squad size on a Beast of Nurgle realistically is 5.
Mm.
Like, you can take one, but you're never going to.
Yeah.
And it's just silly things like, I don't know, why are guardsmen 18 quid and
Yeah.
G-Steel Occult Guardsmen are 28 quid?
Yeah.
Like, it's just stuff where they just know they can get away with it, so they do.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think as pressure
But
starts
yeah,
to tell from other places, like there are so many people like Maker's Cult who are doing just
yeah, the
gorgeous
3D
alt
printing
sculpts.
community is
Yeah.
doing some sterling work. The reason 3D's not there yet because not enough people own 3D printers,
Yeah.
and 3D printing is still a skill thing.
Yeah. But saying that, I own a Frozen Mini, which is which when I can be asked to clean it and get it sorted out, is pretty much is about as close to click and play you're going to get at the moment.
Yeah.
Now I tend not to print anything that's kind of current GW because I like them, also want to support them, but
Yeah.
you can certainly see printing is a lot closer than I think people gave it credit for.
It is, but I don't think it's. I think you're much better equipped than the average modeler.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Like, yeah.
So I think that until there's a 3D printer in every home, like
Yeah.
there's a microwave in every home, for technology, for the similarity of technological advances.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's a threat
I don't
yet.
think GW have to worry too
No.
much.
This is it. Like the models are probably there for a lot of stuff, but the means of production just isn't.
Yeah. But yeah, I do. I think that they're fine for now,
Yeah,
but I
absolutely.
do think that they're pushing their luck. They've had some very, very good times recently.
Yeah.
And they're just chasing that dragon. They're just doing it over and over and over.
Yeah.
And at some point, they reach that cap where the community just goes,
Okay,
enough's enough. I'm not paying this much.
this is it.
And
Because
I
I
think
mean,
they're approaching that limit too quickly at the moment. They've always price creeped,
yeah,
but they're now it's not a creep anymore.
yeah. And I think
It's a
this is
run.
it, especially when they're so publicly doing so well financially.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Let's finish on a different note because I've just realised it's half 10. People about if it's half 3. But yeah, I think it's always been an issue. Yeah, fine. I think that model ranges is always going to be a contentious issue. I think yeah. But yeah, anyway, so yeah. But let's finish off with the last common thing. What is your obviously like the kind of running theme of our comp chats has basically been this idea that actually comp is just as much about having fun and it's just another way of playing the game that some people really enjoy.
Yeah.
What is it for you? Like, I know that you enjoy playing comp more than not. What, for you in a nutshell, why is comp such a great way to play? Acknowledging it's your opinion, there are many ways to play.
I think I'm going to answer that by answering why a tournament's so great to play.
Okay.
Because I play comp games to practice for tournaments.
Fair. Yeah, okay, yeah, fair. Tournament play, comp play.
Tournaments are a huge social aspect of 40k. It's brilliant to see so many people with like-minded goals, enjoyment. I think that a huge amount of my friendship group is based around tournament scenes at this point. I think that if you're going to a 40k tournament, like I drink, there's a lot of booze involved. You all end up going out Friday night, Saturday night. I've been out to dinner with people that I'd never met before. It's not uncommon that me and my round 3 opponent and 10 other people who I don't fucking know end up in a pub having dinner.
Yeah.
At 10 o'clock at night, having played 40k all day together, and we're just sharing war stories and having a laugh. And you find out what these people do for a living. You talk about their wives and kids, and just you just make. I just think it's fantastic. And there's the competition aspect of it puts everyone on their game. and it makes everyone sort of focus and think. And I think because comp is much more defined in what you're all getting into, there's a lot less bad feeling about it. Whereas with narrative and stuff, it's a bit more of a social contract as to what people are expecting when you go to a narrative tournament. So yeah, it's just the whole atmosphere that it creates. And I've also just thought of a good way to finish this.
Okay.
We promised a story about the weirdest Sunday roast.
We did promise to talk about the weirdest Sunday roast. Before we get to it, I'm going to say one thing about what you just said, which is what we said yesterday, which is that I think you're right. Warhammer tournaments are this weird thing. Like, it's one of the most accessible ways in which you can walk into a room of people that you don't know and immediately have something in common with everyone in the room.
Yeah.
Where you expect to chat to them and talk to them.
Yeah, you can be, and I think in our hobby there are a lot of people who are, reasonably sort of socially shy, socially awkward. I'm not. I'll walk onto a stage and talk to 1,000 people. I don't care.
Yeah.
But like you can be, and even if you are and you're very quiet and keep yourself to yourself in your normal life, and that's fine. You know, people are people. They all have personalities. There's nothing wrong with that, but you will find yourself at 40k tournaments. You will be at the bar or getting lunch, and you'll be sat at a table, and 10 other people will come sit at the table, and someone will say to you, "Oh, how have your games gone? What's gone on?" You know, and you've probably sat there with an opponent that you've just had because you've just spent 3 hours with the person. You probably get lunch together. It's a thing. And you'll just end up falling into a conversation about toy soldiers. And no one has to talk about anything else. No one has to worry about anything else. But you're just going to tell people about that guardsman who killed a demon prince, and it's just it just brings everyone out of their shell.
With a pistol shot.
Exactly. It brings everybody out of their shells, and it's just a really nice way for a community to build.
Yeah.
And I think that for me especially, a lot of the community in 40k is tournament community.
Yeah, and this is, I think. And this is weirdly, I think, something. So Bristol has a weirdly non-competitive scene, and I think part of that is because we have a very, very strong casual club scene. And I think you're right. I think it's not. You don't have to have one or the other. And I think Joe's way best. It's been really nice to have you on and kind of talk about a bit of Mythbusters. And it's kind of why we have this conversation. Because I wanted to know how I could take 60 Hellions and win. The answer is don't. Fair. Okay.
I mean, you can.
We'll see how it goes.
Just be Sean Naden.
Yeah, fair.
Just spend 20 years playing or thinking about 40k for 15 hours a day.
And then I'll be there.
Practicing relentlessly, building yourself a reputation as one of the best players in the world, and then you're allowed Hellions.
Perfect. Okay, deal. Done. Like Paul Hammer said, it's been nice to kind of have a bit of a chat and kind of dispel some of the myths about stuff.
There are things from non-competitive players, particularly usually ones who haven't actually been to tournaments, who will tell other players that tournaments are this breeding ground of win at all costs, gotcha moments, really unpleasant people who are only there for fighting and playing and having really hardcore games. And that's just not the case generally.
Yeah. And I think,
and
the problem is, it's one of those things where if you have one of those games, it does really stick in your brain.
Yeah.
So
everyone remembers the bad game, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There was when I used to work in the hospitality industry in bars and restaurants, it was you have to serve 1,000 people before one of them will give you a good review.
Yeah.
You serve one person, they'll tell 10 people that you give one person a bad experience, they'll go tell 10 people about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Right. On hospitality, because it is now 22.
So stupid Sunday lunch.
Yes.
Right. So, end of was it Friday or Saturday? It was the Friday night, I think. So LVO, so not LVO, LGT, last year, not last year, year before, because COVID. So last LGT. The Friday was the Invitational. The Saturday and Sunday were the main event. Me and Nick were both playing in both. And the Invitational on the Friday finished at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, right? And we'd all been drinking since, the bar opened at 12. We were drinking out of one of the guys' hip flasks at about 9. Right? It was dumb. So we're all pretty shit-faced. And anyway, so Nick's hanging out with us, and Nick's a big drinker as well, and he's obviously come over from America, so he doesn't really know what's good.
Mhm.
and we're on the outskirts of London, right?
Mhm.
So we he says to us, we need to go eat,
Mhm.
and at this point in my head, I'm thinking, order a pizza to the hotel room, go to sleep. And it's like, no, 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 no. Come on, we're going out. I'm not in England. I'm not going to be in England again for a while. How right he was. Um, um,
So what we're saying is this is Navani's fault.
it's not his fault. It was his suggestion, certainly. I mean, it was brilliant. This wasn't a bad experience. It was hilarious.
Oh, I mean the COVID thing is Navani's fault.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Entirely. Blame it all on him. Um, so yeah, anyway, so we say to him, well, where do you want to go eat? And he says, well, what's like proper British food? Take me to that. And someone said, oh, Sunday roast, that's British food. And he said, well, let's go have Sunday roast. We're like, it is 11 o'clock at night in London. like there's probably somewhere that serves a Sunday roast at 11 o'clock at night, right?
Mhm.
So we got on TripAdvisor or whatever it was we were using, had a look around. There's one pub. It's about 10 miles away. And it serves food till 11:30. So we managed to somehow magic up like 6 taxis to take us to this pub. And we turn up, and there is, I want to say, like the both best and worst AC/DC tribute band you've ever seen,
Amazing.
playing at a volume so loud that I'm pretty sure I vibrated through the door when I stood next to it. Like, you literally had to hold your drink so they didn't bounce off the table. It was crazy. And this is forever what Nick thinks a standard British pub is, by the way.
Of course.
So we went in, it's packed, and we walk up to the bar and like, are you still serving food? And this woman like sighs at us like, yeah, what do you want? And we're literally like, we will have 12 roast beef dinners, please. 12. Bear in mind, half of the people I'm with can't speak because they're so drunk. And she found us this table, and we're sat probably 5 yards from AC/DC Tribute, who at this point are now doing Queen, but
Nice.
still look like AC/DC. And we just had this meal where people are trying to talk about their games, but you literally have to like press your lips to the inside of someone's ear so they can hear you. It was just such a bizarre experience, but it was hilarious.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a proper tournament experience, and this is it,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't have to you don't have to play competitively to go to a tournament. Tournaments and competitive play are what you make of them.
Yeah.
If you want to play a silly list and you learn to, well, you'll do well with your silly list probably eventually.
Yeah, man.
But yeah,
Yeah. One more silly, just on that idea.
got him.
I had a nice little. It's another little heartwarming one. I went to Caledonian Revolution Uprising. One of them. They're all called Caledonian something.
Mhm.
The other name just tells you what month it's in.
Mhm.
They're the ones run by Element Games. They're arguably the most competitive tournament in Britain. Like, the caliber of player is so high. You have the entirety of Team England, almost all of Team Scotland are there. Team Wales are there. Like,
Can't be that high because I've never been.
no, clearly not. But like, if you go to a Cali and you do well, Team England are calling you in the morning for tryouts.
Fair.
Like, it's big.
Yes, Spike. Go to a tournament.
Yes,
Have fun.
Absolutely, Spike. And come to Cali.
No,
because,
play. Playing
I mean,
at tournaments, like...
Seriously, play, because bear with me here.
Yeah.
So, when I was about 11, 12 years old, when I just moved up to York and I first got into 40k, my mum and my sister, who I grew up with, would drop me off at Games Workshop and go shopping. And I'd hang out there and paint some things. And
sometimes they come back and pick you up.
Sometimes, yeah. And there was a guy there who I only knew as Bob. And he was this nice fella, bald bloke, called Bob, very friendly. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, round 1 of Cali, having not seen him for 20 years, I got paired up against Bob, who immediately recognized me and chatted to me and, said all this and like, blah, blah, blah. he says, "Oh, I follow all the competitive 40k. I don't really play competitively, but me and my mates are here for a tournament." And he pointed out his mates, and they were the entire Games Workshop staff of Games Workshop York, circa 2000. Right? It was literally just the 5 of them, and I swear to you, they all finished in the bottom 5.
Yeah, fair.
And they all had the best time. None of them cared. But anyway, I got paired up against Bob, and I was chatting to him. And he said, "Oh, I follow the competitive stuff." I didn't realize it was you because he'd never known my surname. He just knew me as James, right?
Mm.
And he was like, "Bloody hell, you're doing really well. You've come a long way from the little kid that used to annoy us all talking about whatever I used to talk about. I can't remember." And we had a laugh. And he lined up his army, and he was playing Space Marines, but like it was just it was a hodgepodge of random Space Marine units that he'd painted and thought were cool.
So an ultra competitive list in 8th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the key thing that I said to him, like, "Bob, you've played for a while. Like, why are you doing this?" Because what he did was he put his Space Marine captain right at the front of his army. I said to him, like, you just pop him, like you've clearly misdeployed or something, Bob. Just pop him 2 inches back behind that line so I can't shoot him turn 1. He went, no. He leads the army. He goes first. Like, well, yeah, but he's just going to die. It's like, I don't care. He leads the army. He charges in first. And then off he went with his war cry as a Space Marine captain, charged at me turn 1.
Did it immediately die?
Yes, of course it did.
Yeah.
But he was having a hell of a time. He was playing the army how he felt it should be played.
Yeah.
He had a wonderful time. Him and all his mates who I knew when I was 12, and me had a beer, and we all had a chat and a laugh.
This is the way.
And yeah, it was just brilliant. And that, Spike, is why you should come to an event and play.
Honestly, like I've probably spent a lot more time at the bottom end of tables than you have, James. So excuse me while I give my expert opinion here. But like bottom end tables are always fun because everyone there either has a dumb list or is brand new, and you just have an absolute blast because no one expects anything. Like usually in the last game, you're quite excited because one of you's going to get a tournament win. Like you're like, cool, right? We're both currently 0-4. One of us is going to this tournament 1-4. Let's see who it's going to be. And you become
one of us has to win this game.
And more to the point, you become weirdly competitive about the most petty things. Like at that point, you're like, right, you love that model. I'm going to kill it, and you take the smallest victories and you make them big.
Yeah, you just do stuff just to spite people and just for giggles. Like we've had
You should, Goblin, especially because Bristol tournament scene is very friendly. Like
it's
yeah.
Sorry. Swallow that water wrong. Yeah, tournaments.
They're social hubs of events, right? And there happens to be people winning tournaments, and you can't just play.
I think I mentioned at the start, I go to tournaments with a lot of the whole lot, and we have the conversation of what's your realistic expectation of this tournament.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, I was talking earlier about 4-1 results.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Realistically, I'll be unhappy with less than 4 wins because I'm going to compete and try and win, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm there. I'm there to have fun too, and I always do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'll have put a lot of work into my list, a lot of time into practice, etc. I want to finish at the top end. And a lot of the guys I go with say I want to win a game and have fun.
Yeah.
And that is also a completely valid expectation to have going to a tournament. And you have to realize that, like, I've just said Cali's the most competitive event in the country, more than likely. But there's going to be like 20 dudes fighting it out at the top and 80 other dudes at this 100-man event, some of whom are fighting for the mid-table and some of whom have just brought some models they've painted to have some fun playing toy soldiers.
Yeah. And
ultimately,
right?
We are all playing toy soldiers. Like, you have to always have that in the back of your head. No matter how seriously you're taking the game, I am playing with toy soldiers. No one should be that upset about this.
Yeah. And this is it. And I guess the natural joy of tournaments is, generally speaking, you end up playing people like especially by day 2 when you're a bit tired, you're either hungover or you didn't sleep much the night before. So your last 2 games, you're generally playing people who are in they're in your hitting circle, right? They're people who stand a reasonable chance again. You know, the very first one is kind of you could play anyone. So I played, I know you know Simon Pridis, and we've had conversations about how to beat him next time. But he tends to win a lot of tournaments around our way, and he plays lots of ITC events. I played him and got smashed game 1. Fine. Your game 1 is always a bit wonky, but after that, you kind of end up playing a lot of people at your level. So if
that is the beauty of a Swiss system tournament, which is how basically all 40k tournaments are run.
Yeah.
Is that it might take one game, it might take 3 games, but ultimately you end up where you should be.
Yeah.
And you will play people of similar skill levels or similar list levels,
Mm-hmm.
and unless I have seen a couple of occasions where I saw one event and it was really, really unfortunate, where a guy who was legitimately a really, really good player just had the worst run.
Yeah.
I think he paired into me game 1 and lost. And then someone else, there had been 2 other really good players who paired each other and one of them lost. So that guy got the really good player who lost that one. Then he got the next really good player who somehow lost 2 games. And this poor bloke literally just played 4 potential tournament winners in his first 4 games. He was just there what on earth is going on? How is this? In game 5, he was on the bottom table having scored about 10 points all tournament. And he just played some guy who'd never played before and absolutely smashed him and was like, yes!
I win. But this is the other nice thing about it, right? The other nice thing about it is if you like 40k, a tournament is the most 40k you're going to play in kind of a go. Most of us play once a week at club night or twice a week, various club nights, whatever. Whereas actually, you can go to a tournament, suddenly you're playing, 5 games in a row, and you can really kind of gain a lot of momentum. I think you learn a lot going to
I would
tournaments.
advocate doing 1-day tournaments first,
Yeah.
the 3-game 1-dayers.
Yeah.
Because a full GT, 100-man event, you're tired by the end of it. It does take it out of you because the concentration, I know 40k, it's physically it's a very easy game, right? You sit down for 90% of it if you want to. But I defy you, go spend 9 hours concentrating hard on anything and tell me you're not fatigued the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So by the end of game 5, if you're not used to it, you will feel it a bit, and you've just got to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So I would start with 1-dayers if you're new. Also, 1-dayers tend to be more casual, because there's smaller prizes, less people, so they tend to be a good introduction to an event.
Yeah. Especially one of the things we have around here is we have quite a few non-ITC tournaments. So ITC, for those of you who don't know, is basically a scoring system whereby you can submit your scores to a big table. It's basically a big league table over the year.
Yeah. ITC is the independent tournament circuit. It's the world rankings, basically.
And so obviously what you get a lot of people who go to any event they can find that's ITC, score as many points as they can. You get basically your best X tournaments come out. It's best 6 scores, best 5 scores.
Best 6 scores, maximum of 3 1-dayers, maximum of 5 GTs have to have a major in there.
So basically, ITC it's not. People sometimes treat it like it's the be all and end all of competitive play. It's a very good way to play competitive play, but there are many other ways to go and play competitively or play.
It's a way of measuring your e-penis.
Yeah, and this exactly that. And some people happen to come third or top in the UK, whatever. And some of us don't have a ranking because we never play enough events. But I think the theme to this is that comp people aren't bad people. It's a way of playing, and tournaments are great fun social events everyone should go to.
It's the truly top tournament players, the guys who are, and I've harped on about it, but the guys on Team England.
Yeah.
I defy you, if you go to a tournament and you are Spike, who's never been to a tournament before, and you've played maybe half a dozen games and you're not really sure on your rules, if you draw Josh Roberts or Manny Chima or one of the big Team England names round one of a tournament, and you say to them, I'm pretty new, I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, just, let's play a game, but just, be nice.
If I get something wrong, let me know.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cheat you, I just might get stuff wrong. I guarantee you they're gonna take you by the hand, have a beer with you, chill out, just play a game with you. You'll lose.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, they're going to beat you 20-0. That's a thing. But they're going to just be a decent human about it and be nice about it.
Also, in my experience, they beat you so quickly as well that they have time to give you pointers at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, and that is a big thing. If you come up against a big tournament player and they just whoop you, don't go off and sulk about it. One of the best things you can do if you want to improve is stand there and go, well, that went horribly. What do you think I could have done differently?
Yeah.
And just depending on who you ask, they're going to give you different advice and stuff, but they'll give you something pretty constructive back.
Yeah.
And that's not exclusive to the bottom tables, like the tournament I think we were talking about earlier, where Nathan was there and we had me and Malik played each other.
Mm-hmm.
I beat Malik by a point, and Malik sat down at the table for probably 20 minutes and just stared at the table, and just he was just in his head replaying the whole game, trying to figure out where he lost that point. And me and him had a very honest and like detailed conversation where we basically took the game apart. And when I think I lost a point here, I think I gained a couple here, and how could we have blocked this? How could we have blocked that? And I think we both came out of it better players. And me and Malik know each other. Obviously, we've played on top tables before, but like Malik is a top 5 UK player.
Yeah.
But he's also got the
That's a great attitude, Spike. Well done.
That is exactly the attitude. But it's also okay. Like if you take a big loss and you really, if it hits you quite hard, you can also say to your opponent, I'm really sorry. I'm not feeling great about that loss. I want to come back and talk to you about what I did wrong. But first, let's go get a beer and just let me chill out for 5 minutes. And then we're going to go through it.
I had that exact thing. I have had one game I hated, and that was marching 100 warriors into 3 repulsors that I physically couldn't, mathematically, I couldn't shoot them enough that they couldn't immediately heal up all of that damage in the next turn. With the rate I was dying and everything, there was no way I could have won the game, and it just... at that point, at the end of the game, I was like, cool, I shook his hand and said, thank you for the game, and I just went and had a beer and chilled.
Yeah.
And, it's okay to feel like that, because do you know what? No one likes losing if you're trying really hard.
Yeah. Sometimes it does suck a bit. Yeah. That's the thing. But it's about there is such a thing as being a good winner, and there's such a thing as being a bad winner, and there's such a thing as being a good loser, and such a thing as being a bad loser.
Yes.
And it's being able to win or lose and come out of it with your opponent still liking you.
Yeah. Listen, we won. I mean, so Rob said he was harrowing to watch. We had several games like this where stuff went really wrong. Rob managed to fire exactly that, and there are many, many people for me to play who are better. I know James and I played quite a few times on Tabletop Sim, at least 2 or 3 times during lockdown.
Played a few times, yeah.
And generally there's always a half an hour out on the session at the end where we talk about stuff that I would do better and I get better because of it. I'm conscious I said let's wrap it up at past, and it's now 57 minutes past. So if anyone has any questions, do fire them forward. But I think, the theme for tonight is... we're throwing toy soldiers at a table made out of plastic, right?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've come in here and talked about competitive 40k, I know everything about it, but realistically, I've played at the highest levels. I have won some majors and stuff. I'm not a world champion. I still have a long way to go.
You're a European team champion, though, right?
I'm a Belgian team champion.
Oh, Belgian team.
I play for England at the BTC, not the ETC.
Okay.
I was going to the ETC, then COVID.
Yeah, fair. 5 shots against pylon, 5 shots from a pylon against a hive tyrant. 4 got through the invuln, and he passed all 4 his 4-ups.
It just happens sometimes, man. It's those sort of situations where you just have to sort of bang your head against a wall and go, well.
Yeah, and then 6 trophies won, and yet all that atrocious luck we had, we won best sports. So
if you ever want to be truly, truly frustrated by dice, play Manny. And watch as every roll that you need doesn't happen, and every roll that he needs does.
I want to throw him against Gur just to see what happens.
It's genuinely, I played against Manny in pretty much a mirror match, and failed to cast a single power with my Thousand Suns. I was trying to cast 12 a turn. I failed to cast a single power, and he never rolled less than an 11. His psychic phase. And we were literally stood there, and people were we had a crowd watching, and they were just like, what on earth is happening? How is this a thing? It was it wasn't me failing them. It was because this was when the streak started. I successfully Perils of the Warp something like 22 times in a 6-turn game.
That's incredible.
It was obscene, and that was the last game of the last tournament before we went to the Belgian Team Championships. I then went to the Belgian Team Championships, played against Tau first. So they could not interact with my Psychic Phase at all. And I was literally playing a Thousand Suns Demons list with 7 Psychers in it. And I think I Perils 20 plus times in that first game again.
That reference Tonga is making is, we were talking yesterday, we finished a stream in very shady circumstances. I've worked out mathematically the best way to cheat is to take 10% of your dice and replace 2s with 6s, I think.
Yes. Russia did it at
Did
an
they?
ATC.
Oh, yeah. Bastards.
And they replaced them with 5s because 6 is too obvious. Everyone watched 6s.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, they did. The head ref still has them. It was years ago now. And it was only one player, and he got red carded. But whatever.
Yeah.
But no, the worst thing with Manny, is he'll use your dice. He does it to you.
Watch them betray you.
Yeah, he will literally, and he'll literally say it as well. He'll just be like he'll have his own dice.
Yeah.
Every so often, he'll just be, I just need a 6. Just borrow one of these, and just throws it. And it comes up as a 6, and you're just like, fuck you. I hate you so much. It's the confidence that he does it with. It's the attitude, and I just he amuses me so much. He's a really, really good friend of mine, and he's so entertaining. He's so happy and cheerful, and sometimes you just need to punch him.
We should maybe we'll get him on. Maybe we'll see if we can persuade him to come on and chat one time about stuff.
Yeah.
But I also, because the thing I want to do, I want to get you. Basically, I want to get most of the Team England squad to take on the 720 grot challenge and see who does it best.
What we will have to do with that, I don't think they'll want to do it tabletop sim, but
no, in person, I'll come up. And
if we go down to Glasshammer or something, Manny will do it.
Yeah, this is it. We'll go down. We'll just I'll come up for a weekend and we'll get everyone on it. And then because I would like to see who does it best, especially I think with a tournament list though. I think it has to be a tournament list.
Yeah, we'll organise it at some point because I'm meant to be going down to do some stream games with them and bat reps and stuff, but then that was scheduled a year ago and never happened, obviously.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. So there will be coming for everyone watching. The hobby streams will carry on once we're out of lockdown. They'll become slightly less frequent, and there will be more actual people fighting 720 grots on stream. It's now 23:02.
I think we talked for 3 hours.
We've talked about a lot of stuff for a long time, so I'm going to say thank you, everybody. Let's give everyone a shout out. Thank you, Ray, for coming. Thank you, Flair, Goblins, Mediocre Modeler, Sons of Ananta, Spike, Tonga Upturns, who's also first in today. So good job on that. Abbots Costello, Aiton, Bing Cortana, Commander Root, Democracy at Work, like it, Extra More, Lex, and Rob, and everyone else who joined in throughout. Thank you for joining us. It's been lovely to have you. Thank you, James, for dispelling lots of myths about comp play for us. Tomorrow, I'm not 100% sure I've got on. I think I've got Jay on, who is our local staffer, who has a really good reputation for being an amazing, inspirational hobbyist. And then I know at some point we've got Mediocre Modeler on, and we're going to be talking to Squamper, Operation Squamper as a go. And I think there's going to be some live Squamper building on stream, which would be nice.
I've done no painting.
Oh yeah, I've done about 50 odd grots, but that's very small compared to what we've done. Thank you for coming, Spike, and hopefully you've learned a bit. I know that you're one of the people who's new, so I'm glad you stuck about because I was a little bit worried that we were going to kind of be shooting at a level that people who are new weren't going to enjoy. But I'm glad that kind of everyone's enjoyed, and thanks for taking our questions, James. I'm going to flick us over to the new thanks for watching thing I've got. Is there anything you want to add before I do?
No, just thanks everyone for checking it out. I know that I've talked a lot today at people and hopefully not waffled off too much.
Yeah, and I'll see you soon with my new 60 Hellion and 27 Reaver list.
Cool. I will do something horrific to it, I imagine.
I'll see you later, everybody.
Cheers, guys. Goodbye.